I think there's a lot of truth in that notion that one of the worst people that you can possibly ask for a whiskey recommendation is a whiskey geek. Sometimes we just get too excited and we get too caught up in the nitty gritty and the fact that we are so far along, we're really, it's hard to hold back the passion and the excitement, isn't it? Sometimes it needs just a kind of more broader, gentler, guiding hand. And we've got to remember that sometimes. But I think it's also, there's some responsibility on the producers in order to bring us things that we get excited about, that we are impassioned about, that we want to share, and at a reasonable price too. That, especially now as we're getting into whiskey season, is what we're going to be talking about tonight. But can we do it with just 3 whiskies? We'll be talking about that and a lot more. And I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing very well. It's wonderful to see you all. It's wonderful to be here back again for another Thursday night's vPub. Let's just pull up this chat really, really quickly to make sure I'm catching it. It seems to be moving very, very quickly tonight. Over 200 of you in as the doors open. It's wonderful to welcome you here, and it's wonderful to have your support, especially after I was a wee bit naughty and I took some time off last week. Listen, I just want to start tonight by saying a huge thank you to all of you for supporting the pop-up vPub last week, but a huge, really heartfelt thank you to Vin down at No Nonsense Whiskey, who gave you all safe harbour last Thursday while I was busy holidaying over in the Isle of Arran, and he did a good job of looking after all of you, and he seemed to have a lot of fun doing it as well. I'm very, very appreciative of that, and it's wonderful, this kind of dynamic of kind of trusting each other, as we've talked about before, and this kind of collaborative environment that we enjoy sharing in YouTube. And it was wonderful to see everybody over on No Nonsense Whiskey. Vin, thank you for looking after all the Barflies and beautiful whiskey folk. Cheers, buddy. So many chats coming in already, so many highlights. My goodness, let me catch these quickly before I start rambling and going on about the reason that I'm picking this specific topic tonight, because there's obvious reasons and there's less obvious reasons, but I still want to share them with you. And it looks like Whiskey Franco, my friend, he's celebrating being a member already for 2 months, saying good evening, Roy. Thank you, Whiskey Franco. Thank you for your support. It's great to have you in, along with Don McCausland, who's Don, you're celebrating 10 months, and he's saying, hello, Aquaviti and all you lovely Barflies. Fantastic, Don. Good to have you. Jay Chung. Look, I've got all these whiskies. Jay Chung was cheeky. He was naughty. I've met Jay before, and he was back in Glasgow again, and there was a very narrow window of time that our paths could cross. And he said, I'd really like to meet you, Roy. I got to meet him and his partner while they were touring Scotland, and I took along his bottle of Aquaviti Loch Lomond that he'd had delivered to me, and we did that exchange. And he told me he had a bottle for me as well. He actually brought a case of American single malt over. There's an event coming up in Glasgow in a couple of weeks' time, Jay. I guarantee you that some of this gorgeous liquid that you shared with me, buddy, will be shared with the Barflies through that event. Wonderful to have you in, and thank you very much for being a member for 32 months as well, my friend. Glad to be in the pub, says Jay. Wonderful stuff. Watchman 999, Greg is also celebrating being a member for 27 months. And Whiskey with Molly Ben, who I managed to cross paths with today. And I've got a wee dram here that I'm probably going to try and have a wee blind sip of. But Ben helped me out with a bit of a tour, a bit of some arrangements today, and I managed to meet up with him quickly as well, and he put some liquid in my hand, telling me absolutely nothing about it. So quickly, I think I'll spend a wee bit of time just welcoming in some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated Barflies. If you're trying to get my attention, like always, unless you're on Facebook, I won't see you from on Facebook, sorry. Finn was very good at taking comments from Facebook and YouTube, but I use the YouTube chat because the Barflies, because the emoji, because of the support, and that's always what I've focused on, and my eye is trained to watch it. So if you're trying to get my attention in the YouTube chat, just type Aquavite or @Aquavite, and like Don Miguel has done, you should be able to pick it up. He's saying good evening from Barcelona, Spain. Fantastic, Don Miguel, wonderfully welcome you. Just arrived home from SMWS tasting event with some delightful cask strength stuff. Tonight I'm watching the vPub with a glass of water. You're rehydrating after your cask strength whiskies, Don. Fantastic to have you and welcome. Bienvenido. Salud, amigo, Roy, he's saying. Island Hopper Stewart is here. Island Stewart, so good to see you again. Let me guess, will Deanston 12 feature is one of the three? We just have to wait and see. I don't think you'll be surprised, and I don't think you would argue with me if I did feature it. It may crop up tonight. There's a bit of a structure about what I'm going to do. I've stuck to the 3 whiskey rule, but I've kind of done a tiered thing. So you're going to shout at me because it's very hard. If you've tried to do this, it's very hard to transport yourself back to your first steps in your whiskey journey when you maybe only had 2 or 3 whiskies on the shelf. It's very difficult to remember those days. It is for me. Jim Whiskey Novice is celebrating being a member of the Barflies and saying always good to join in, mate. Slancha to you, my friend, over Northern Ireland. Jim, good to have you, buddy. Gav Strams is in. Good to see you, Gav. He's saying hello, Roy. And Molasses Mike is saying welcome back. Vin did a fantastic job. He did, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed it too. That's really good to hear. And Bruno Martins is saying Roy Aquavite, a great topic tonight. Glad you like it, Bruno. It was one that was kind of teased out and pulled forward, and I'll tell you why in a wee second, why I had to gap fill tonight. It's fully on my shoulders. Drew from Arizona's in as well, saying greetings, Roy. Good to see you, Drew, buddy. I think you're looking forward to a wee trip to Scotland very, very soon. And Robert Fredrickson, sorry, Robert, is saying hi, Roy, and everyone. Good to welcome you in, Robert. Gino Camo, oh, fantastic. Gino coming in from Canada. He's saying, hello, great to see you. It's been a while. It's maybe been a while that you've caught it live, Gino, but I always love that you're picking it up regardless of where you are and when you are. Good to have you, buddy. I hope you're doing well alongside hanging out and dramming with your friend Graham Young. Don McCausland is saying, oh, I see you have the Westland Colère there. That is definitely an enjoyable bottle to drink. There's another recommendation for one of Jay's that he's brought along. Fantastic. Good to see you. Just as the chat jumps, Graham Young is actually in. Cheers, Roy. So glad to see you tonight. Fantastic to see you too. And Whiskey Malt Content, Vlad has bought me a wee dram to say thanks for another vPub, Roy. Cheers. Well, thank you, Vlad. You're obviously confident that you're going to enjoy it tonight. I hope that you are too. It's something that's very, very close to my heart, the topic that I have tonight, because I have doubled my enjoyment of whiskey through sharing with other folk, and they're very, very often, more often than not, whiskey curious. Jenny Carlson is in. I'm off. I'm on a daft mill tonight. See, I can go off brand. So Jenny Carlson, Jenny works for Adelphi, Ardmurchan. So she's very often, and you can understand why, because the whiskey that she's tasting, trying to learn and get to know and things, it's going to be her own portfolio, of course. But just like a true whiskey fan, she's sipping a wee daft mill from the East Coast Lowlands. Hope you're enjoying it, Jenny, and it's wonderful to have you in the vPub. Rob Halford, the same, good to see you back. Gutted the VinPub got cancelled this week. You would like to have both, probably, Rob. Tom Elmer is here too. Tom, fantastic, buddy, so good to see you. Easy peasy. First bottles were Johnny Walker Black and Glenfarclas 12 and Glenlivet 12. So that's him remembering his first whiskies, just probably the most ubiquitous whiskies that exist, especially for Tom in the States. Specifically, he's in Alaska, actually. JW Black, of course, Glenfarclas and Glenlivet 12s, the original 12-year-olds. You might be surprised that none of those, actually, I don't think you will be surprised that none of those feature tonight. Are they worthy? Yes, I think they are, especially for the purpose that we're talking about tonight. But I'm going to take a different tact on it, that you'd probably get more out of the single malts there than you would out of the blend, but it'd still be worthy to put in front of somebody. Paul Tabernor is saying, with the price of whiskey in Ontario, having only 3 bottles sounds fantastic. Yeah, I get what you're talking about. And it's got so much, that's kind of one of the angles tonight, is that, look, I know that a lot of us, especially the enthusiasts, end up, we through accumulation of the flavour chase, we end up with just much, much more whiskey than we need. So it makes sense that we want to share it with people, especially when it's pricey and things like that. But what I'm trying to focus on a wee bit is that in order to do that kind of evangelical thing, in order to do that guiding thing, in order to encourage people to maybe understand a wee bit more about what whiskey can offer, you don't need as many bottles as you might imagine. inevitably, if the whiskey bug bites them, they're going to end up with a cookie trail of bottles, just the same as we have. But sometimes we need to take a bit of stock and realize that we don't need quite as much as we thought. But it's like any other passion, we end up probably indulging a wee bit too much at times. Ian Bruce is saying, evening, Roy, hope you had a good trip, just enjoying the vPub with some diluting juice. Fantastic. Good to welcome you in, Ian. And it's good that you're having a wee break and a wee night off. And Jimmy Legg is celebrating being in it with his pink Barfly, 33 months. I ban you from any further time off in 2022. Let me just mention that, Jimmy. Thank you so much, my friend. Thanks for your support. Dave Cummins is in as well as Hell's Wood. Good to see you, Dave. Gonna pour some Glengoyne 21 as it's my birthday's 52. How can it be 2 years has passed already, Dave? Dave was originally supposed to be coming to Scotland. We were going to do this thing where he was having his first dram and we're all going to be doing it together. It was Glengoyne that would pick Dave, wasn't it? But listen, I'm just going to raise a glass, and I hope that we all can raise a glass for Barfly and friend who have finally met in real life now over in the States. Raise a birthday glass for Dave Cummins and say, my friend, 2 years into your whiskey journey now, I hope it's everything that you hoped it'd be, and I hope you have a brilliant birthday. Many happy returns, Dave. Cheers. Good to see Ellen and Handy. Ellen and Handy? That's not going to become your new name. You're Helen and Andy. It's good to see you in tonight, Helen. Wonderful to have you. I hope you're all both doing well. And a wee dram from Whiskey Straight. Al, good to see you, Al. Here's a wee dribble. Yes, I'm miserable. No, you're not miserable at all, buddy. It's wonderful that you'd even come in here, spend a wee bit of time and raise a glass with me. Cheers, Al. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Cheers. A wee dribble. I like it. I've only got a wee dribble left in this glass, Al, and I'm actually a wee bit surprised how much I'm enjoying this tonight. Thank you, good sir, says Dave. Many happy returns, Dave. Fantastic. So, I wanted to, what was I was going to talk about there, something there. I was just interrupted. I've lost my flow. There was something that was just going to pop up into my head if I can pick it up. No, but I have missed a couple, Frank. Daniel Williams, wonderful. I'm missing so many of you, and the chat's moving so quickly, over 300 of you in. Let's get on with the thing tonight. Firstly, I want to talk about, that's what I was going to talk about, the fact that I wasn't here last week, and not handing my excuses, and I've got more excuses to make for this week too. Last week was because it was a family holiday, and we have to, where our holidays are forced these days into when the school holidays are, when the kids are off, and if the kids are home, you need to get out of the house if you can. I've never been to Arran in my life. Much to my shame, I've never been to Arran, and I had the opportunity to take a wee trip over to Arran, stay in some accommodation there with family. In the end, we managed to hook up with the Whiskey Rev, my old whiskey pal. Very appropriate for tonight's topic. And we got to spend time, the two families together, and it was a fantastic week, despite, quite honestly, brutal, typically inhospitable West Coast of Scotland weather. There's no such thing as bad weather, just wrong clothes, right? So we just made do. We got out of the house every day, and I even managed, with the blessing of the family, to fit in a couple of whiskey trips. We took a trip down to Laphroaig, and Graham, and specifically Fred, looked after us fantastically well at Laphroaig. Wonderful distillery to see, wonderful visitor experience, so welcoming, great cafe, wonderful, spectacular views right across the really moody peninsula there. You can see all the way over to Kintyre. Just fantastic, just a great distillery to go. What to notice about Laphroaig actually that struck me is that everything is kind of hunkered down. It's quite low. It's trying to be really discreet and almost morph in to be part of the landscape. So the buildings are really quite low. And then you look over at the kind of dark green coloured warehouses that are almost sunken into their own little kind of mini glen there. Oh, just trying to keep the profile quite low and kind of blend in a little bit or not be too obnoxious or sticking out. And I noticed that about Laphroaig. The other thing I noticed about Laphroaig as well is that they are not messing around. So many distilleries are going for these light, elegant, fruity spirits with a really long, slender stills, and lots of reflux, and lots of. They're really going for light, fruity kind of styles of whiskey. The first thing you notice when you walk into that still room is actually all in one room. The mash tun, the washbacks, and the stills are all in one big, massive room. Is the fat, squat stills. They are not looking for that. It's quite obvious. And when you taste the new make and when you taste the new lag, you are getting something that is very, very, we don't care. This is the whiskey that we want to share with you, and we know that it's different. That was the takeaway for me. That's not their words. That's not me quoting them. That's the vibe that I picked up. Especially the new one that's just out. This is a really young whiskey, really quite bold and jagged. But the more time that you spend with it, the more that you realize that this is a snapshot in time. I always remember Roddy, our friend Roddy, that's appeared in the vPub many times, talking about the most interesting whiskies are often made from the most challenging new makes. This new make was challenging, but not in a way that it was difficult to drink. It was challenging in a way that it was grabbing your attention. This wasn't a light, fruity, estery, easy spirit. This was base note heavy. This was thick and oily. It sat around on your palate for a long time, and you could work out that this is not typical of a lot of the new distilleries that's appearing on the horizon, in my opinion. None of this is the language from the distillery. This is purely me. But it was wonderful to be able to go there and process that and feel that and understand that. Of course, there are new releases out there now. There's not a lot of it around. It's going to be very hard. I know that there's ballots and going everywhere. I was not successful. I didn't get any lag at retail, but I was able to pick up a bottle at the distillery. I was also able to pick up wonderful value drinks and drams at the bar at the distillery because it's very, very reasonably priced. Take note, all the other distilleries out there that's fleecing visitors because you think you've got a captive audience or something. I think it's a huge shame. Everybody should be making sure that the prices that they pay at the source is fair. It doesn't need to be cheap. It does not need to be discounted, but it needs to be fair. The worst thing that you can do is have somebody buy a bottle from your distillery, a dram from your distillery, and then they go elsewhere and work out that the most expensive place to buy it is at the source. It does happen. It's not the case at Lag. Absolutely not the case. Then later in my trip to Arran, I got welcomed at Laphroaig by Andy Bell. Fantastic. They're going through construction there just now. We're not getting a full tour. It's just the way it is right now. They're extending one of the bottlenecks at the distillery in order to make more of the spirit that we're craving so much right now from Laphroaig, and they're putting extra washbacks in. So it means that they're closed for tours, but they have kept that shop open. They've kept their cafe and restaurant open. They've kept everything going, the tastings as much as they can, and they're doing a fantastic job. Could have spent all day at Arran, Laphroaig, all day the next day as well. Absolutely loved my time there. Jesse Artensalo is celebrating being a Barfly for 11 months and saying good evening, Aquavite and Barflies. Good to have you in, Jesse. And Whiskey Volt is saying, that's what I loved about Springbank. Amazing drams in the washback bar for a fair prices. You go away with a warm, fuzzy glow, feeling like that is whiskey. That's amazing. I got to experience that, and I don't feel like I was fleeced. I don't feel robbed, and I didn't feel defensive and worried about wanting to. You naturally want to take a souvenir away or to enjoy something while you're there. Not all the distilleries have bars, I understand, but some distilleries, the prices at the visitor centre is rude. And I'm going to start calling it out because I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary. I think you can give people a better experience. Tom Elmer is saying, in truth, my lovely bride would love your title tonight. She informed me the other day that I had spent more on whiskey than we spent on heating this last year. Ouch. Remember Alaska. Aye, you have to remember Alaska. And I'm not sure that will be the case next year, because the way the prices of heating is going and the way the prices of whiskey are going means that the option will be cut. For so many of us, Tom, maybe you too. James M is saying good day from Sweden, Roy. James, good to have you, buddy. Good to have you in. Okay. Arran was fantastic. What they say about it being the miniature Scotland is absolutely accurate. It's wonderfully easy to get around. Gorgeous, gorgeous scenery. A beautiful place to look at as well. I hope that you have a wee bit better weather than I did when you get there. But it was a fantastic trip, and it was great to hang out and enjoy some whiskey tales and stories and drams with the Whiskey Rev too. Years ago, I sat over a table from the Whiskey Rev, and he was whiskey curious. He very much was. And I put out of a flight of 6 whiskies, probably 6. And I took him through one at a time, and I evangelized, and I was thumping the table and declaring my love for this, that, and the next thing. And suffering from a wee bit of Dunning-Kruger effect, if anybody wants to know what that is. It's fascinating. Just Google Dunning-Kruger. It's really cool. And I was just talking about whiskey. But I did something because I was able to make the Whiskey Rev feel like it was an accessible thing. If Roy can enjoy it like that, then I can too. And he stepped into the whiskey bubble, and the two of us built a very fast friendship over the course of the following years that meant that I often joke that it was a bit like an arms race, because we're both trying to bring new experiences, new flavours, new bottles to the table every single Whiskey Wednesday of every week. It was wonderful. I had a whiskey pal, and I had whiskey pals already then, but they were sporadic and they were kind of around the place and meeting them from time to time, whatever it was. The Whiskey Rev and I had a regular thing on a Wednesday night, and it fast-tracked my whiskey understanding, my whiskey experiences, because I was able to share the costs, I was able to share the moments, I was able to have somebody to bounce it off, somebody that wasn't going to make me feel silly for the tasting notes I was pulling out, and I wasn't going to make him feel silly for whatever he was getting. It was just mutually enjoyed whiskey. And that was so, so good for me, because not only did it mean that I could learn more about whiskey, but I could vicariously enjoy the whiskies that I'd already had experience with in the past, fresh, all over again, with a new whiskey pal in the Whiskey Rev. I love this. Tell me what you think. Watching his reaction. Just, that's got to be one of the little guilty pleasures that we have about sharing whiskey. I hope it is for you. I hope it's okay to talk about that. I think it's a very cool thing. Dave Cummins is saying, I agree about the gouging in some distilleries. The only job they have is to create goodwill for their whiskey, not get money from you. Then that's exactly it. And it's mindset. It's not about they need to charge that. It's just mindset. And it is just a case of we will sell it at this price. It will sell. So we'll put it out at that price. Just because you can charge that price at this moment does not mean you should. It leaves a bitter taste. The best thing that you can have is an honest and fair relationship with your customer, and they'll be far more loyal to you, I think. You're relying far too much on a strong brand to do it any other way. Loy is in. Loy Pinheiro, he's saying, I agree with you. Whiskey isn't whiskey until it's shared with good company. Exactly what the channel was founded upon, and it's no small part because of the relationship I had with the Whiskey Rev. And Hellswit is saying, it's nice to see that reaction when you're sharing a dram and it hits the spot. There's a really cool article, actually, not entirely coincidentally, if I'm honest. It was scheduled for next week, but it was pulled forward and put out today because of a technical reason. But I also was happy to schedule a Dramface article by Dougie Crystal today that talked about that very thing, Loy. And it's somebody at his work, and he'd been just kind of gradually offering samples and trying to encourage a friend at work who was a little bit suspicious and a little bit kind of judgmental maybe about the tasting notes and things. And then one day, Dougie was able to witness his friend holding up a glass, that reaction flashing across his face and declaring that he's discovered apples in the glass. He can taste apples. That moment is really compelling because you can see that they realize at that point it's not smoke and mirrors. That when people talk about flavour in whiskey, it's real. And the more you invest in the whiskey, the more flavour delivery comes back to you. Less drinking, more tasting. It's fascinating. I was very lucky to have the Whiskey Rev as a friend for so many years. The whole purpose of tonight in picking these whiskies tonight is in the hope that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, and you've been doing it for long enough, I know that often I'm preaching to the choir, that you're maybe able to reach out to some folk and say, hey, whiskey's not a drink. Whiskey is an absolute experience. Whiskey is about flavour. Whiskey is about moments. Whiskey is about realisation, contemplation. Whiskey is about sharing. Whiskey is about friendship. Whiskey is about getting together. All of these things that I talk about week in, week out, I know is falling on welcoming ears because you know this. So what do you do? It's a theme that I've used for a wee while now, and I've used this theme in the past. But I'll make no apology for kind of regurgitating that theme again tonight, because I've brought a different angle to it. It's a fresh thought with different whiskies, because time's moved on since the last time I spoke about this. Why tonight? Honestly, if I'm brutally honest with you, I was supposed to be coming to you live tonight from the Isle of Rassay distillery out on Rassay. I reached out to Alistair months and months and months ago, and we booked this date. And for a dozen reasons, this week, everything happened in this very, very concentrated spot that meant it was next to impossible to pull it off. For the first time ever on the vPub, I've had to pull out on a commitment. So apologies to Isle of Rassay Distillery, to Alistair Day and the entire team there who'd set everything aside for me only to 3 or 4 weeks ago phone them up and say, I'm not going to be able to make it. So that's what I was supposed to be doing tonight. Huge apologies to them. But we will reschedule that, hopefully. I think now we're looking at into the new year. That would be an amazing experience for me to go to another island that I've never been before and have somebody who's willing to set me up and let me broadcast from their space. So tonight, instead, I thought, come into whiskey season, this time of year where we're sitting down at a table together and we are inevitably going to be confronted by people, by acquaintances, by old friends, by new friends, by whatever it may be, people who are whiskey curious. And we have the opportunity to kindly, slowly, lightly, welcomingly invite them in to enjoy whiskey. And I think that's very, very important. That term I use there, whiskey curious, because you cannot force whiskey on people that do not want to try whiskey, that don't want to try strong spirits, that don't really get the whole flavour thing, the alcohol thing, whatever it may be, whatever their resistance is. If they are not willing, don't waste your whiskey, don't waste your time. Gentle, gentle, gentle. And it has to be a sliver of curiosity in order for you to step forward and for that to be welcome. I hope that's obvious. And for all of us, including me, there are people in our lives that are just never kind of going to get it. They're just never going to get it. And that's okay, isn't it? Jimmy has bought me a dram. How much will it take to get the rev back on the vPub again? I don't think that too much. I think the big problem, Jimmy, with the rev now is that he's so far away. And when he's been on the vPub in the past, it's been because he's here. And that would have been pre-COVID, wouldn't it? We're probably going back to 2019, at least the last time the Rev was on. So I know that you're a fan of the Rev. I think you'll be dead chuffed that you are, and you would be keen to have him back on. There might be something, a community thing or a sample type thing, a blind tasting or something like that he might be interested in joining in remotely in the future as well. I'll bear it in mind, but in the meantime, I'll raise a glass, Jimmy, and say thanks for the dram. My brother is here tonight. My brother. One of the reasons I couldn't go to Rassay is it's the only week that we could get our families together. And him and the family have come up. He's actually in the house tonight. I think he's in an armchair somewhere enjoying a dram right now. When he first arrived, I floated a suggestion. Why don't you come on the vPub? Why don't you come on and hang out with me? Absolutely flat, no chance was the response. But I'm persistent and I'm a little bit of a bully. And I've kind of just gradually been saying, oh, well, you know, what do you think? So I'm hoping that he's watching in the background with a wee dram in his hand. And maybe he'll come in and raise a glass with us, and I'll be able to get him to say hello and maybe join us for the quiz at the end or something like that. Maybe. I'll message. Lee J. Brown is saying, is he watching? Lee J, I know that you're down in Chippenham. And Patreon comments told me that you'd started a club down there. So I'm going to want to know about that, Lee J. I hope it's going well. And if you ever need any help or anything, a shout out or something like that, and think I can help you with your club, buddy, let me know down in Wiltshire there. I hope he's watching. He's maybe fallen asleep. Hellswood is saying, finishing off your Brora. Oh, wow, my Brora. Did I give you some Brora, Helen? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't even remember that. Jimmy Legg is saying, your brother kind of sounds like a sissy. My brother's the exact opposite. If he was a sissy, I'd have been able to get him onto the vPub all the more reason to find a way to introduce you to him. And No Rolex is saying, come on, Aquavite, brother, be a good sport. Don't worry, No Rolex. We'll get him on a wee bit later if he's not falling asleep. So let's just hit you with the first 3 whiskies. Actually, I think the first thing I should do is what I said I was going to do. And try Ben. Whiskey with Molly Ben gave me a blind dram today. He said, there you go, there you go. Have a wee think of that. I'm not going to tell you anything about it, just let me know what you think. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, if I've got a minute, I'll try it on the vPub tonight. It's a completely unmarked, this is a branded Whiskey Pioneer bottle, but I've got no idea what's in it, and I've got no idea other than I hope it's whiskey. It's whiskey coloured. And it's whiskey smelling too. Okay. I was expecting something quite jarring. I was expecting something really quite different, but this is very appealing to me. The nose is very fermentation forward. It's very estery. I think it's quite high in ABV. I think this is cask strength. But I'm certainly drawn to a kind of more modern, fruity, fermentation forward style. I think this could be quite young on the nose. There's a lot of bright, clean, but young elements floating around in here. A lot of citrus. So sweet bready notes and citrus. Orange oil. A wee bit of wine, tannic thing. Let's go in for a wee sip, Ben. Decent mouthfeel on arrival. I think it's quite youthful. Very quickly turns to a hot mustard and chili spice. The fruit dies away quite quickly. It moves over to the spice. Hangs around for a while on the palate, but it's not. The flavours tend to die away quite quickly. That thing that you get with maybe younger spirit is feeling like a wee bit younger. I feel like this is quite a new whiskey. I feel like it's a young whiskey. High 40s, early 50s ABV. Maybe you need to leave it sitting for a wee while. I don't know if you want to play a wee game there, Ben. I know that you're in tonight. I don't know if you want to share with everyone what it is, or let me know what it is. Is it Scotch? I think it's Scotch. But I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Whiskey with Molly. This is a single cask Speyburn 15 from Douglas Lane, finished in a sherry butt at 55.4%. Only 241 bottles, and best of all, it's only 55 quid. Do you know what's worse than that? Is that I own this, and I took this to Arran. Now, admittedly, the Rev and I only had one glass out of it, but that's all we had. So there you go. I saw that at £55. I saw the Speyburn 15-year-old. So I've gone from, I'll tell you, I'll make my excuses in a second. I've gone from a 40% ABV to, as you say, 55.4. That's where all that superheat is coming from. And interestingly, that's fitting with the chat tonight. But we only had a couple of drams of this, and I took it with me. I've got it over here. I've got it on the shelf somewhere. A Douglas Lane, was it their Midnight series or something like that? I saw it for £55 and I had to grab a bottle too. Terrific, Ben. Thank you very, very much for the blind sample. Actually, it wasn't a blind sample. I chose to do that blind. You didn't tell me I had to. And Loy is saying, don't forget to do a bottle shake for the bubble test. That's right. It's one of Charlie McLean's and more recently Phil and Deepa's favourite things to do. We should get a good bead from it. Oh, aye, that should have gave the game away. Now, it doesn't work all the time with all whiskies, that shake, but if you get that good bead that hangs around for a long time, that tells you that it's usually a giveaway, as you see there, that it's decent ABV. Whereas, if I pour a lower ABV whiskey, and this bright orange of this will probably give that away, cover it nice and tightly, you can see there's virtually no bead on that whatsoever. Can you see that? And this is 40% ABV whiskey. Doesn't mean that it's bad whiskey, but it definitely means that it's different whiskey. And it's one of the ones that kicks off my first three. And I'm just going to go into the first three just now. How far are we in? 35 minutes in. It's the usual for the vPub guys. Sorry, I hope you're here for the long haul. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with the idea that you and your quarry, the people that you're trying to convince to understand a wee bit more, to enjoy whiskey a wee bit more, to treat it not as a drink, but as a flavour, as an experience, as something that's more than just a simple drink. It's inevitable that they're going to go to their local supermarket shelf, their local liquor stores, the places that it's going to tend to be stocking much more ubiquitous stuff, mass market stuff. I don't know how you want to, what terminology you want to use, but the things that are available everywhere, and that tends to be things that are way down at low ABV and widely distributed. Of course they are. That's what I'm going to pull up first. But apart from the dram that I've got in my glass right now, I'm not going to be sipping those tonight because I quickly want to make a point and move on to what you actually want to talk about, what you are actually going to be much more impassioned about sharing, and actually arguably it's going to be more effective in getting across a concept of what whiskey actually is. So I'm using the old theory of not going by regions, not going by Irish versus Scotch versus Japanese versus bourbon. All of these are valid ways of sharing whiskey and good fun ways of sharing whiskey too. I'm focusing on Scotch right now because I think it's super compelling to talk about the variation in flavour that exists within that one fairly narrow category. So what I've gone for is 3 different styles, very much the same that you've seen me talk about in the past in the vPub. Bourbon cask, light, fruity. Sherry cask, dark, rich. Peated, smoky, savoury, sometimes sweet, sometimes iodine, sometimes medicinal. All of these things that smoky, peaty whiskies can bring. That is 3 kind of compelling extremes, almost like bookend styles of Scotch whiskey. But even an absolute beginner, somebody who's not really spent any time with whiskey before, could have these 3 different small pours and appreciate immediately that there's huge contrast in the flavours. So what do you pick? Well, if you're going to your local supermarket, you would perhaps be drawn to this, wouldn't you? Even more so in its bright, new, shouty packaging. This is the brand new branding for Glenmorangie. This is available everywhere. It's often on offer. I waited to buy this to see if it would go on offer, but it's not gone on offer yet. So I ended up having to pay £37 for this at the local supermarket, which is fine. You know, that's kind of how supermarkets play the game in the UK, probably the same where you are as well, that they have a high price, but they've actually negotiated this based on their discount price. So Glenmorangie, maybe next week I'm going to walk in there and it'll be £30 or £28 or even less in some cases. Ridiculous the way that supermarkets work because they teach us not to buy the product from the shelf until the yellow label goes up that it's on special offer, and suddenly we can save a lot of money. It's just the way supermarkets operate. That means that they negotiate on those cheap prices. And I have to be honest, this is a 40% whiskey, but it has a 10-year-old age statement on it, and Glenmorangie has never let me down with this 10-year-old. Except in one respect that I'll get to in a second. This is a very consistent, very good quality entry-level product, if you'll forgive me for using that term, entry-level. This is delicious. I don't think it deserves to be £25 whiskey. I don't think it's £37 whiskey either. I think the true price of this is someplace in the £30 mark, £32, something of that order, and it should just stay there. That's just what it should be. And I know that there are reasons for the price to fluctuate all over the place, but that's the price of this whiskey. I paid too much for this. I hope you don't. However, we know this to be fully ex-bourbon matured. And the flavours that we share as we talk about this, I think I would have a good chance of getting my friend, my new whiskey friend, to nose this and smell what I enjoy in this whiskey. People usually talk to me about citrus, citrus peel and oranges notes and sweet things, sweet toffee, sweet caramel, vanillas, that kind of thing. But for me, I always get a lovely pineapple cube note out of Glenmorangie 10. And because I'm looking for it, because I've had it and found it in the past, I tend to find it again. But it's very typical of the style. You can put that in front of somebody and say, this is very typical for ex-bourbon matured stuff. So where am I going to go in the same supermarket aisle, the same shelf space, to find the same example for a sherry style? The pickings are very slim. We've got Glenelgin, sherry cask. It's only available occasionally. 40% whiskey, non-age statement. That's available there. It's a sherry finish. But the pickings are very slim beyond that. There's been Tam the Vulans in the past. There's been, again, a finish. There's been various different things. But the reason that we don't get fully matured, smashing sherry whiskey at this entry-level price point is because of the cost of producing that, the cost of the casks. It's very, very precious liquid. But it does exist. It's out there. This is also another recent Dramface review, interestingly as well. This is the old branding. This is going to be something that I suggest that you consider for this. This is Naked. It used to be called Naked Grouse. This is when it was called Naked Grouse. It actually says Naked Grouse around the label at the top there. You can see it still says Grouse. And there's actually an embossed grouse on the glass label. But this is just called Naked Malt now, and they've got a barrel or something else. They've just removed the branding. They've separated the branding to give it its own branding. They're calling it Naked. This is not a blend like Grouse. This is blended malt. There is only malt whiskey in this, presumably from Edrington distilleries. But, you know, with cask trading and things like that, we don't actually know what's in here. Glenrothes, Macallan, Highland Park, bit of Glenturret. But I guarantee there's a good chance that there's external products in here too. Maybe it's all made with Edrington stock. I'm not sure. But what this does do, sometimes £28, supermarket style, right? Sometimes £22, sometimes £19. That's what I paid for this bottle a couple of years ago, £19. And this does give you a nice, albeit soft, fairly linear, dare I say even smooth, is valid when we're discussing this whiskey. Don't let anybody tell you that any words are not to be used to describe whiskey. Use whatever vocabulary is appropriate. Don't let anybody rob you of words. This is a smooth whiskey. It's very easy and very accessible, very rounded. But it's also got a good sherry lick and kick to it as well. And for the price, you could recommend this no problem, and they're not going to be too out of pocket as they go along and try it. And then, of course, you're going to be wanting to give them a peated bookend as well. And I looked at the supermarket shelves this week, and the choice is not what it was. The choice is not what it used to be. Yes, there are some new things appearing there. We're very fortunate to see things like the Lechick Sinclair series and Lechick 10-year-old sitting on the shelf. Wonderful, fantastic, good value, good quality whiskies. But the old incumbents that we used to see are disappearing fast. And if they're still there, the price is going up and up. In my local supermarket, there were some £50, £60 and north whiskies there, and I don't think they were worth it either. Again, you'd be waiting on that yellow label. But here's one that was there, and it was on offer. I didn't buy it. This has been on my shelf for a long time, but Laphroaig 10 was there. Somebody's going to look at that. Somebody's going to see this very, very familiar branding and associate it with what they recognize as Scotch whisky, maybe even recognize it as a single malt. And they would maybe be tempted to pick this up and try it. I think it's important that you let them try it from your collection if you have it first, so they know what they're getting into, because even at 40% for them as a beginner, this is going to bring a lot of organoleptic information for them to process if they're not used to peated whisky. Now, I'm not saying for a second that that means that they shouldn't be trying this. We've talked about it at length. Some of the most successful conversion bottles that I've had have been from Islay, or they've been superly flavoured peated styles. However, the thing that brings all of these in line is the ABV. All of the whiskies I've just shown you, the Glenmorangie 10, the Naked, and the Laphroaig 10 are all 40% ABV in the UK. Maybe where you are, you get it at export strength and you get a few extra points ABV, 43% ABV. But in the UK domestically, we get it at 40. And that's a problem for me. And it's not just because I'm a snobby whiskey geek. I'll tell you why I think it's a problem. I'm going to jump in to you guys and break the monologue for a second and see what you're saying about it. Again, I'm picking up the orange, and Falscraft is saying, I kind of like the new Glenmorangie packaging. Makes for a good decoration in duty-free shops. Well, here's the box. I kept the box for this one just for this purpose. I only bought this week. And you can see that it is very shouty, and they've broken it up into almost syllables here, right? Glenmorangie. So a lot of people pronounce this Glenmorangie. Obviously the Angie or the orangey part being the emphasis, but it's the more, it's the that's the more is where you should emphasize it. So it's Glenmorangie rather than Glenmorangie. But listen, if people say Glenmorangie, it's absolutely fine. You can continue to say Glenmorangie if you want. People know what you're talking about. But this doesn't really help that, I don't think. I don't know if there's any deliberate reasoning. I don't know why they've broken it up there, or if it's just because the aspect of this, you can see on this side, they've used the aspect fully to get Glenmorangie in the biggest letters that they possibly can. But if you do it vertically, you know, from a branding perspective, if you want to make the font bigger, you can't do a Johnny Walker and do the angle. You've kind of got to use the space, and that's what I think that's all that they've done here. I've kept some of the branding with the kind of Celtic infinity patterns and things like that the same. On the bottle, I have to say it's still quite an elegant bottle. It's the elegant kind of Glenmorangie shape, and it won't come across in camera too well, but there's some nice copper embellishments and things that make the bottle a wee bit better in the hand than it perhaps photographs. I'm not a fan, but I'm not put off either. You know, just you let these organizations just kind of continue to modernize and move forward. It's inevitable. But there's a lot to be said for the kind of elegance and understated Glenmorangie labeling that we had in the past. The only thing I would say about the previous Glenmorangie bottling is that the 10 was a bit understated. It's always had an age statement. But aye, Falscraft, I'm glad that you kind of like it. It's always quite a subjective thing. I have to say that my experience only 4 grams into this bottle is that it's not changed at all. Whiskey Vault is saying, how would you compare Glenmorangie 10 with Annock 12? Aquavitae, probably around the same price and maturation. Annock 12, I think, is a bit more of a flavour experience, but it's kind of quite unique, Annock 12, to me. I always find, especially depending on what you sip it in contrast with, there's that kind of dry, kind of clove type note that's in there. I would say I would recommend Annock 12 heartily as a 40% whiskey. I think it's good. I think if you were to ask me about 40% whiskies, there's a few that jump to mind. Annock 12 is one of them. The old Scapa 16 is another great example. There are 40% whiskies out there that do great things, but I feel the same about them all. And the exact same point I have to make about this Glenmorangie too. In fact, all of the whiskies I've shared is that the ABV is such an effective delivery mechanism for flavour. If you are sitting somebody down and you're giving them whiskey for the first time and you're asking them to enjoy neat spirits, perhaps they're not used to enjoying neat spirits. More than likely that's the case. So asking them to jump from their wine or their beer or their mixed drinks or whatever it may be to take that leap and sit and enjoy something in tiny sips, very high ABV at 40% plus, it's a big ask. And it's going to take some investment from them. In my experience, not from a whiskey beginner, but my experience as people who have helped people enjoy whiskey, is that 40% and 46% whiskies are not chosen based on the ABV. You know what they're chosen for. You've been there. People choose the whiskies. People are drawn to the whiskies from flavour. especially when we are trying to teach people to drink less and taste more. Ironically, it's higher ABVs that deliver more flavour and force you to slow down, sip by tiny sip. Flavour draws people in, not putting the whiskey out and at the minimum strength it's allowed to be and still be called whiskey. In my experience, the ABV, the difference between 40, 43, 46, and even above 46% is not the thing that puts people off. It's a lack of flavour. It's blandness, generic whiskey flavours. That's what puts people off. I hope that didn't go too much of a rant. Whiskey Vault. Phil Jones is saying I have a bottle of naked malt, which I've mixed half and half with Monkey Shoulder. Okay, so Monkey Shoulder's a blended malt with 40% ABV as well. It tends to lean a lot more to the bourbon end of the spectrum. Phil, tell us how it's working out. Are you enjoying it? It's great at that price point. If you get it on offer, you can do a wee bit of home blending. It'll always be a blended malt whiskey. It'll always be blended malt scotch. Whiskey Vault is saying Finlagan would be a great option. Finlagan, another 40% ABV whiskey, absolutely. I feel that I know why it's there, I know what it's doing. I feel it's not bad whiskey. I think that, like this Glenmorangie, don't we wish that this pure version, there are higher ABV Glenmorangies out there you can buy. The Quinta Ruban's higher ABV, even the Nectar d'Or at 43, Quinta Ruban's at 46. Lasanta believed to be 46 as well. So there are higher ABVs Glenmorangies out there. It's the same product, but it's just been given additional maturation in Quinta Ruban's and port, Nectar d'Ors and Sauterne, and Lasantas and sherry casks. Give us a couple of years more maturation on this too. Or keep it at 10. Give us at a higher ABV, Glenmorangie, because I think this would be the best product in your portfolio. This is gorgeous whiskey. I always just feel a wee bit more texture, a wee bit more grip, a wee bit more communicative interaction. Not based on having 1 dram, but based on hundreds and hundreds of drams. Ardbeg and Legic, no Rolex is saying is in most supermarkets. Yes, indeed they are. Oftentimes they are. And Whiskey and Wine Trials, that's Tom, of course. Tom, he's even telling me it's Tomo. Naked Malt was the gateway whiskey for my wife. Perfect. And I think it's a pretty good product for doing that. I think that it does a good job of bringing a lot of flavour with an accessible profile. Absolutely. Lowlander is saying I recommend Loch Lomond 12 when it's on offer. I do too, Lowlander. It looks like a new name and it's nice to welcome you in. I talk about Loch Lomond a lot. And Jimmy Legg is saying, I think every brand is completely correct in having an entry to their product line. I do talk about that a wee bit later too, Jimmy. And Karsten is saying, I used to have the Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban port release. It was my first big favourite in whiskey ever. It's just nothing to head for nowadays for me anymore. It's inevitable that we branch off and go forward. But honestly, Karsten, ask yourself if you're in somewhere or with somebody in a restaurant, in a bar, at their house, whatever, and the only thing that they had was that Quinta Ruban, I bet you could sit with a couple of glasses of it and enjoy it almost as much as you did in the original days. Don Miguel is saying, is there any recent successful brand redesign? We are a bunch of nostalgics. I couldn't agree with you more, Don. I could not agree with you more. I think, for me personally, Benromac is a big step up, but that was hugely criticised. You know, it's easy to take to social media and comment sections and things like that when you disagree with something than it is if you do agree with something or you want to celebrate something. It's understandable, but you know, from a aesthetics perspective, for me, subjectively, it was better. But objectively, from a branding point of view, Benromac rebranding was a huge step up for me. But a lot of people preferred the old one. Whiskey Babbler from Germany, good to see you, my friend. Do we really need more ABV? The 70 to 90th, 40% ABV, the 70 to 90th, 40% ABV still deliver compared to the current released ones. Well, I'm going to move on to the next Whiskey Babbler. I'm going to move on to the next lineup, and I'll tell you why I think this is absolutely compelling. I've got 3 different alternative products that you could put into this slot, this bourbon slot where Glenmorangie 10 was sitting in at 40% ABV. And I'll let these kind of answer the question for you. Now, I'm going up. I'm premiumizing here, but I'm coming from the perspective of you've given somebody 3 whiskies in the lineup I've just shared with you that they can go out and pick up fairly inexpensively, perhaps, fairly locally, available everywhere, and it's certainly going to be familiar to them. And they can play at home with not too much exposure to decide if it's something that they like. But if they're in your company and you're sitting with people that you care about and people that you want to treat and people that you want to really understand more than just minimum whiskey, 40% ABV. In my experience, if we talk about flavour, the slightly higher ABV brings that now. The jury is out, whether it's because it's unchill filtered and there's more texture, more mouthfeel and everything. It's not about comparing one dram to another. It's about lots of whiskies, lots of experience over lots of time. And in my experience, when I give people things at 46% ABV plus, they're not coming back and telling me it's far too hot. They're already saying it's hot at 40% if that's their problem. The people that are happy to sip at 40 are happy to sip at 46, in my experience. But the flavour can be much more compelling at that level. And I'll hold these up and you tell me if you disagree. These are a wee bit more expensive. You're up in the high 30s, maybe early £40 to offer them a wee nip of Compass Box's new Orchard House. Non-age statement, some youthful whiskey in there, some older whiskey in there too. For 46% ABV. It's a blended malt, but the style of that whiskey, that blended malt, is very much on the lighter, fruitier end of things, in line with mostly ex-bourbon matured. Then I've got 2 products here from Deanston, both different price points, both wonderfully valid. They've already been mentioned in the comments tonight. I've got the 12-year-old Deanston, which is a staple. It's an absolute staple here. And more recently, because of the value proposition and, in my opinion, the increased quality from Deanston over recent years, the 18 has become a staple as well, as long as it stays affordable. One is very light and fresh and clean bourbon, and this one's a wee bit more kind of sweet, taking advantage of the older spirit, definitely, but they've got a first fill finish on the 18-year-old as well to brighten and sweeten things. Both fantastic. If I put these in a glass alongside this, do you think that they are not going to be able to tell the difference in flavour? Or do you think that they're going to prefer the Glenmorangie over these because these are at 46%? In my experience, the ones that they come back to tend to be these. Not every time, not always, of course. That ABV makes a difference, and it's more than just heat. It's more than just alcohol burn. It makes a difference. Now, of course, I'm going to be talking to them about these concepts. I'm going to take the opportunity to say, what do you think about these? What do you think about that whiskey? What do you think about the fact that it's at higher ABV? Let me tell you why it's at higher ABV, and I might be guiding them. But when they leave my company, when they go out into the world and they're picking their own whiskies, I want them to be able to hold the bottle in their hand and know why one is 46%, the other is at 43 or 40%. And you can give them that concept very easily and very simply from just sitting with you once. And they can decide whether they want to stick at 40 or whether they're quite comfortable to sit mid-40s and higher ABV. John Drinks is saying, looking forward to the supercharged Virgin Oak. Yeah, the cask strength Virgin Oak as well. I haven't even seen it anywhere yet. Is it even released? It's going to be interesting. I think they're both out at non-age statement. The original Virgin Oak is 46.3%. They're bringing out a cask strength version of that. It's going to be interesting to see what the price is. But I think it's a good move. It's an interesting move. I think there's not much out there. The only other cask strength Virgin Oak that I have is a Tomatin, and it was a distillery bottling. Antonio D is saying Redbreast 12 and Green Spot 40% triple distilled. Are these flavoured water? No, I don't think so. I think they're good. Green Spot 40% is a favourite of mine, a little kind of regular for me, a staple despite the 40% ABV. I prefer the higher ABV Green Spots, but that's very accessible, enjoyable and tasty. Redbreast 12, Redbreast 12 is by far the weakest Redbreast for me. The low style beats it. All the higher ABVs, the 15, the cask strength, of course, beats that easily. But Redbreast 12 is a wee bit like what Jimmy Legg was talking about when you have an entry-level product that gets people in, and that's got a 12-year age statement as well, which is commendable. Yes, I would prefer it for the same reasons I'm talking about here at higher ABV, but I'm an enthusiast. But I also have beliefs and reasons for that. We don't just sign up to the enthusiast charter after X amount of months or years drinking whiskey. We sign up to it because we've understood a significant difference in the enjoyment that ABV brings. And Shay Francis is saying £60, distillery only, distillery website. Not bad. You know, it's £35 for Virgin Oak. So cask strength at 60. You know, they're going to see how it goes, how it flies. It's a wee bit pricey. That's more expensive than Tomatin's cask strength. It's more expensive than a few. It's knocking up towards actually Ardnamurchan cask strength is that price. And I would guess we're talking about similar ages for the Deanston Virgin Oak. Maybe the Deanston Virgin Oak is a year or two older. I'm not sure. A wee bit pricey, but yes, I would be keen to give it a go and see what it's like. And Danny Hemmington is saying, I love the Virgin Oak, so a cask strength would be marvellous. So then Danny he's going to be interested in the extra flavour that ABV brings. And Whiskey Babbler is saying, sure, get your point. Definitely we don't need the Glenmo at 40%. Give us extra we wish like. So Whiskey Babbler, what I think would be great is if the 10-year-old has been there for so long that if it stayed out there and it didn't change, but they just brought the exact same product out, maybe with an extra flourish of maturation, maybe dropped it to an 8-year-old, but gave us a higher ABV or a cask strength version, just a core range Glenmorangie, but it's not their market, it's not what they're chasing. But their liquid is very, very good. And that's the feeling I always have when I have good times with the Glenmorangie 10 is like, oh, if only. Especially when they're happy to give us the finished products at higher ABV. Hogsheads is saying, is there a Tobermory 10 and Lechic 11 Virgin Oak finish at cask strength out? Oh, there is a Tobermory 10 and a Lechic 11 Virgin Oak finish at cask strength out. I'd highly recommend the Lechic. Another good call, Hogsheads. I've not got my hands on either of those. So let's go to where I would be levelling up. So I'm bringing it across maybe my Orchard House or one of my Deanstons here, depending on price. What am I going to put in the sherry cask slot? Well, here's one that I've promised to try and light up a wee bit more on the vPub, and that's Glenfarclas. The ubiquitous, familiar to everyone Glenfarclas doesn't appear enough on the vPub, mostly because of the ABV argument, if I'm honest. It's personal to me, but this is the 15-year-old. So this tends to be a slightly higher ABV. Infamously batch variable, but it's single malt whiskey we're talking about. You know, there are companies out there, Glenmorangie being one of them, that have deep enough stocks to keep a beautifully consistent product, such as Glenfiddich 12. But in Glenfarclas certainly have very deep stocks too, but they seem to be a bit less focused on matching batch after batch after batch. The only problem I have with that is there's no real way for us to tell what the batch is when we try to pick it up off the shelf. I can see a batch here. This is a 18th of February 21, but it's very, very difficult for me to and despite being in quite bright lights here, it's very difficult for me to read that easily, especially if it's going to be in a tube. But this is their 15-year-old, and it's interesting in the range in the lineup, the Glenfarclas 15, because it's the one that's at 46% ABV. But more often than not, this tends to be quite robustly sherried. The 10-year-old and 12-year-old can kind of fluctuate in kind of how much sherry influence that they have. But if you're using it as a contrast pour, the 15 is pretty reliable for that, I would say. We're going to try that tonight. The Deanston I'm going to pour is a bright, fresh favourite of mine, the Deanston 12. And the PT1's an interesting one because I could have gone a lot of places for the PT1. But if I'm picking it from my shelf, but I still don't want to turn around to somebody and tell them that I'm pouring a £90 or £100 bottle of whiskey, but I want to pour them something nice, something that brings a good, solid, no bones about it, peat punch. Laphroaig, 10-year-old that we've already had, is at 40% ABV. Lots of interesting flavours in there still, but let's be honest, we want to bring something that's a wee bit more robust. There's quite a few places to go. Lagavulin 8 is still affordable, but it's still £50 and north of that. And Diageo remains on the naughty step because of recent decisions, crazy decisions from there. If you look at our Big 10, 46% all natural, fantastic. The one that I've got on the go just now is probably one of the best Ardbeg 10s I've had. It's a 2020-2021 bottle. I still think it's got the capability of being great liquid. But I have gone a wee bit left field, and I'm going to pick something that's been on the shelf for a long time and needing opened. You and I have no idea what's in this. Well, maybe somebody out there does, and maybe a brand ambassador or somebody could come along and tell us what's in this, but this is a port Askaig. This is it specifically says Islay on the label. So we know it to be Islay whiskey, but it's at 45.8% ABV, which interestingly for the geeks amongst us will know that's the Talisker ABV, typical Talisker ABV. So I've always wondered why it's a 45% ABV, the 8-year-old, but it always is. It's still 45.8% just now online. It's not changed. And it tells us on the label in a couple of places that it's from Islay, so it's definitely not Talisker. But what it also gives us is a big age statement on there, 8 years old, non-chill filtered, and no added colouring. Look at that. It says it right on the front label. If I could get this to focus. Hopefully you can see that. The great thing about this, it's often on offer, but you can pick this up at retail for £39, thereabouts. Right now on Master of Malt, I noticed when I was checking the price tonight, when the price popped up, there was a gift pack as well, £44, and they'll send you 2 Glencairns. So you can gift your quarry, your prey, your whiskey curious pal. You can gift them a couple of Glencairns to take away with them too, that you can pick up for practically next to nothing. But we've got that thing. Notice I didn't pour the supermarket ones, but what I will pour for myself is these 3. And hopefully you can see the really pale 8-year-old Islay and fully natural whiskey, peated whiskey. You can see the bourbon cask Deanston, and in the middle you can see that darker Glenfarclas 15. Now, Glenfarclas, they don't tell us if they are not adding colour, or do they actually? Maybe they do. On the back, in very small letters, it does say natural colour, more complex than our younger whiskies, lots of body, superb balance, blah, yada, yada, yada. Yep. So it doesn't matter about what follows that statement. They've opened up with natural colour. And why is that important? Well, we can talk about these 2 colours. We can talk about the influence that comes from the cask. 12 years in ex-bourbon, 15 years in, we believe it to be much more sherry forward. Absolutely on the nose, it is. We don't know if it's American oak, we don't know if it's European oak or anything, but it's much more on the nose. It's much more kind of Christmas themed in here. You go straight in and there's a lovely kind of baked spice type notes. The cinnamons are there. There's a nice cocoa, powdered cocoa, chocolate type note. The fruit is plum jam, cooked ripe plums. So you might want to talk about these notes and things as you talk to somebody, but you might not. You just might want them to just know nothing more than how different it is from this. Super outdoor fresh hay and malt, light lemon, white pepper, clean. It's completely different. It's completely different. And then you ask them to put their nose in this super pale thing. It's almost as light as water. Certainly pale as light as white wine. Icing sugar behind a big puff of cool outdoor smoke. Clean. Very Kalila-esque. Could be Kalila that's in this. Far more likely to be Kalila than anything else. It is a single malt. It's not a blended malt. Super easy. Super now winter type whiskey. If you ask them to taste these 3 whiskies, ex-bourbon, ex-sherry, peated Islay, and you ask them to taste them alongside each other and tell them that it's all natural colour, not only can they appreciate that it's natural colour, but they can immediately appreciate the huge variations in contrast and flavour. And I think that that's compelling, especially when you tell them that the ingredients are the same. Barley and water. Yes, we've added yeast for fermentation. That definitely affects flavour. Yes, we've matured them differently. Of course, that affects flavour. But the core ingredients, for these three different things that taste nothing alike, to me as an experienced whiskey botherer, and to them as a complete newbie, they taste completely different. It's not about picking favourites. It's not about giving scores. It's just about tasting, feeling, smelling, knowing that these are different drinks. You got the peated one and it's not even in the same ballpark. We umami lick from that there. A savoury, almost like a rice winer. Fantastic. Sweet, spiced, smoky and savoury. With a bizarrely powdered sugar, icing sugar, long finish. What have I been missing? Telex is in. Telex, my friend, so long since I've seen you. I hope you're keeping very well. So good to see you in here. Only 3. Are you crazy now seeing it? I know. It's so hard. But this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to get us away from our massive collections. I wanted us to just dial into just this concept of 3 bookends, 3 whiskies. The more of a geek you are, the harder it is for you to pick 3 whiskies. Whereas if you're quite early, you're probably going to find it much, much easier to pick 3 whiskies. There's nothing wrong with having all that whiskey to choose from. But sometimes it's kind of nice for us to, you know, look at it from a different lens. Try and look at it from somebody that's just coming in, somebody that's enjoying it for the first time. Because I guarantee you, if you can get them enjoying it, you're going to enjoy it too. Prestige Liquids, Andrew's in, he's saying, I would love for Babel to try Aussie Apera sherry matured whiskey. We're still, I know that it's true for so many whiskies, isn't it, Andrew? Still struggling to see much of it here. Dramface, we're managing to reach out to people in the whole, every corner of the world. And we're specifically trying to promote and celebrate all of these different whiskies so that we can have a wee bit of vicarious enjoyment and understand what's going on in concepts in various corners of the world, how they're approaching whiskey, at what scale, how they're bringing it. Is it Scotch-alike? Is it going to have its own kind of local theme, local provenance? So we are reading about them, Andrew, but we're not getting to taste enough of them. Lowlander is saying, how much did all those bottles cost? For me, the Deanston 12 is typically a 35 to 40 pounds bottle, so it's up from the Glenmorangie 10. Absolutely, I think it's worth it. The Glenfarclas 15-year-old age statement, quite a bit more mature, a bit more expensive, hovering around the £50 mark, I think. I paid about 45, 47 for mine, but maybe a wee bit more than that now. I should have checked beforehand. Sorry, Lowlander. And the Port Askaig, I've already mentioned to everyone that it's £39. If you pay 44 on Master Malt, I think it was 44, you're getting 2 free Glencairns right now, but it's a £39, £40 bottle of 8-year-old Islay whiskey. When Islay whiskey is becoming more and more expensive all the time. Interestingly, in the Oswas, there's only one Islay whiskey nominated in 2022. And that's not deliberate. It's not on purpose by anybody. There was no filters, and there never is any filters put in there. This is just what naturally comes through. We don't distinguish, and it's only through processing and looking at the numbers that we see that there's one bottle from Islay has been nominated. One distillery, Brookladdy from Islay, they were nominated as well. So I think that's got so much to do with that rising price of Islay whiskies and us seeing less available, as I mentioned to you earlier on. I know that our Big Ten is still available from time to time, as was mentioned, but generally we're not seeing affordable Isleys on the shelf anymore, I think. Barley, water and care, says Jimmy Legg. Absolutely, you can easily argue that care is a valid ingredient, certainly human component. And Andrew Pierce is saying only £48 for the 100 proof on Master Malt. Great value at that. Brilliant. So that's Port Askaig 100 proof you're talking about there. So what you'd, there's no age statement on 100 proof. I feel like that's right. I'm suddenly second guessing myself. I think the 100 proof is no age statement, but you're right. Sub £50 for cask strength, or let's say batch strength, because they do match it to 100 proof. it's fantastic value, Andrew, as well. And I think if you were to partake and believe what I'm talking about here when I talk about the ABV and the flavour that ABV brings, you would perhaps be drawn to the 100 proof over the 8-year-old. So before I kind of conclude this whole thing, I'm going to bring in 3, as if in response to Lowlander talking about price there. I know you're making a point about price, and it remains a core theme and a target of the vPub. It has to be so much about price. I'm going to go into the last tier, and I'm going to encourage everybody, because I have blundered my way through this so many times when I've been sharing whiskey. I have kind of overshared, I've over-geeked, and I've scared some people away. And sometimes you can scare people away by talking too granular, too much detail. It's all just terminology, and you just want them to just enjoy the whiskey. Maybe hold off even on sharing your own tasting notes and things like that unless they ask you, unless it's obvious and appropriate to talk about it. Just hold off a wee bit, and certainly be very careful about how you talk about price. I shared a few weeks back on the vPub an anecdote about I was getting a builder and to look at, just give me some prices for a job, and he was standing here, we get talking about whiskey, he was keen, he was interested in whiskey, put a bottle of whiskey in his hand, talking about it. I could see his face light up. It was clearly something that I think he might enjoy. It was almost at the point of saying, would you like a wee sample to take home or whatever? And at just at that point he said to me, how much was this? Without beating an eyelid, I said £60. And I saw the reaction on his face. And he looked at it. It was suddenly like he was holding a baby. And he thought, what is £60? Is this super collectible or something? And I realized what I had done there. I realized that I'm still not learning. £60 to somebody who's not really into whiskey is a ridiculous amount to spend on a bottle of liquid for drinking. He has not yet understood that sometimes £60 will give you every bit of £60 worth of value, sometimes arguably, depending on what it is, even more. Because he is perhaps looking at whiskey as a drink, like a glass of beer that he doesn't think about too much as he drinks it. Maybe he thinks about the first few sips of his wine and then he just gets on with drinking the rest of the bottle. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a drink, but whiskey is so much focus. Like, it's not unique, it's not alone, but it's so much focus is on flavour. You're tasting, not drinking. And a lot of us have discovered that there are some tastes and flavours out there that are worth £60 a bottle, but we need to temper our passion, and we need to always have perspective and understand that people are not often there yet. I work in a liquor store, says Andrew. I have learnt very quickly not to overshare with customers too much because you can scare them off. I have done it regularly. Jeff Whiskey's saying, still yet to spend over £69. Can't bring myself more than that. And I know, Jeff, what that £69, what it went on, buddy. I know exactly the bottle that you spent £69 on. I know exactly what you're talking about. But let's say if we are willing to amp things up a little bit, where would I go? It's still got to be available, okay? Nothing I'm going to share with you here gets ridiculously expensive. I'm going for things that still, in my opinion, bring value. Let's go and stay in that bourbon lane for a little while. And while I'm pretty convinced that this regularly steps outside of bourbon, I feel like there's often a wee bit of sherry in this. I should have checked what the makeup was before I put it in the options tonight. But it could just be that they're using a pretty active bourbon casks in there to bring that really like quite sweet, rich edge along to things here. But in Craigellachie, 13-year-old, we've got a bit of maturity. We've got a challenging thing. So if you wanted to talk about texture, and if you wanted to talk about sometimes occasionally slightly different odd notes depending on how sensitive the palate was, you could start to talk about concepts like texture being part of the taste and flavour experience. Craigellachie, I think, would be a good one to do that with. And I think it swaps out our Orchard House or Deanston, even our Glenmoran G10, and it's still reasonably priced, still well under £50 in most markets. I notice that some places it is selling at £50 right now. The most expensive one that I have for you tonight is in the £70, but I still think it's cracking value for that. There are very few 18-year-olds. So we're giving somebody a treat when we pour this for them. We're sharing something very special. But it's sometimes available for £70 and a wee nudge less here and there, depending on where you pick it up from. But it's the one I've spoken about quite recently on the vPub. I've talked about the 15-year-old at length, but this is their 18-year-old. I'm tearing through this one now. I've rediscovered it. Suddenly made its way to the front of the shelf again, and I'm really enjoying it too. Very decadent, very rich. I would have put the Speyburn 15 forward again and talked about it for like the third or fourth consecutive vPub, but depending on where you are, the batch thing does come into it, and only the recent, in my experience, the recent Speyburn 15s tend to be heavily sherried or much more sherry forward. Before that, they were a wee bit more bourbon-esque. So if you wanted to guarantee the contrast there, that's why I picked the 18-year-old in this lineup. I'm going to do a wee uncorking here as well, but it's not this one. This is the one. You saw my reaction 2 weeks ago in the vPub when I had this open bottle. It'd been open with only a dram or two out of it for a long time, and I hadn't touched it because I admitted to you it's not one that I particularly got on well with. And I poured it live in front of you 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, am I never going to learn? It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. And I've had another dram just to reassure myself that that wasn't a one-off, and I'm loving this. Suddenly Port Charlotte is another Islay age-stated. It is a £50 bottle, but it is 50% ABV. Another Islay bottle that is a contender for being part of the Perma shelf, a permanent fixture here. Good value, despite being £50 or close to £50. Again, you might get it on offer or a wee bit cheaper where you are. But it's terrific stuff. Would you be afraid of pouring this for somebody at 50% ABV? You might mention it. You might not. They might detect that it's quite a bit hotter. But maybe by the time they've had one or two pours of 46% ABV whiskey, they're not going to be too sensitive to it, and they're going to get a big, beautiful, compelling taste of peated Islay whiskey. But I've got one more here. And it fills a gap that I believe is a real gap that's out there. And it's that middle piece in this trifecta, if you like, that sherry lane. There's not enough of it out there. I struggled to see anything that was available on a kind of easy mass market shelves. Struggled to find a sherry example that was freely available and reasonably priced. This does it. It's not available everywhere, but it's certainly available in the UK, and it's a brilliant price. Jimmy Legacy and that Port Charlotte and the Craigellachie 13 are great, and even greater because I can always get them, and that's the best. Specifically for you, Jimmy, in Nova Scotia and Canada, I can understand how much of a big deal the availability issue is. The next one I'm going to uncork for you, buddy. I know that you're not going to get a hold of it. I know that. But I still want to share it with you anyway, because there are producers out there that are able to find this sweet spot. And there's no excuse for the bigger producers not being able to do it. Peter Lee is in. Good evening, Roy. Just back home from a busy night at work. What did I miss? Not very much. Just a typical vPub monologue from me, Peter. You know the language. Somebody's guessed already. Rob Halford said, ooh, TBBSW. That's Thompson Brothers. TB is Thompson Brothers / SBW, Scotch blended Scotch whiskey. But it has an age statement on the front. You'll see down the bottom, it says that it's aged 6 years. Quite interesting branding, okay? It's a wee bit minimalist, a wee bit kind of just very bold, straightforward, very easy. It's not going for anything fancy. But this is very sherry-led. You can tell by the colour. Thompson Brothers is absolutely natural. But for £33, yes, £33, they've brought us a 46% ABV whiskey. They know the ABV is part of the flavour prospect. This is the Thompson Brothers we're talking about. They kind of know what they're doing. Oh, we have to get that noise, don't we? Lovely dark colour. Let's hold it up to the Glenfarclas 15 I poured earlier on. There's a 15-year-old sherry mature product in the Glenfarclas. And if we put the Thompson Brothers next to it, it's almost identical. I maybe go, oops, excuse me. about a nudge darker. Thompson Brothers is just a wee tiny nudge darker. But this is not malt. This is blended whiskey. So this is malt and grain. Now the word is that it's malt heavy. It noses very malty. There's not a lot of obvious grain to me on the nose. This is just out the neck pour, it fresh out the bottle. I've had this before, but only by the dram. But it's very sherry forward. The nose is a potpourri of Christmas spice, dried orange peel. There's an oakiness to this. Wet oak, soft oak. Like if you've ever nosed or opened a barrel and put your nose in, that kind of sense of slightly dank, slightly fusty, but fusty is not the right word for this. It's oaky. Sweet apple. Looking for any sign of kind of grain whiskey, but not much at all. Cheers, everyone. Lighter from a texture perspective, but full of flavour. All the flavours there. Softer than you might imagine. 46% ABV. Again, the ABVs, it's not all about ABV here. This is soft and easy. You could sip this and tell somebody it's 43%. I'm sure they would buy it and understand this is very soft. But there's enough there. There's enough texture there. It is light. The finish isn't huge. It's not long. But all the sherry flavours are there. They're all there. So suddenly for £33, we've got a natural, high-integrity blended Scotch whisky that delivers a very good sherry experience in the sherry lane, and it's not super expensive. So you can still do it. I appreciate that this isn't everywhere all the time, and I know because the way that they're making this is maybe going to vary from batch to batch to batch, but maybe because a blended whiskey, they're going to be able to get a lot of it out there and they're going to be able to keep it on the shelves. I hope that that's the case, because we have to remember the blends of old that used to be loved, the Bailey Nickel Jarvies and things like this that are long been discontinued. And people don't have that kind of rock solid perma-shelf steady whiskey to rely on that they can just open and share and give to people who do drink for drink's sake. But they can sit and enjoy it as a flavour, as a lovely, lovely flavour experience. And what's wrong with a 6-year-old age statement when the alternative is no age statement whatsoever? Because that's the case here. Fantastic. £33, nothing to argue about. Very confident about opening that because I've been able to try it by the dram. It's appearing behind the bar as well. Seek it out, £33. Ryan Sutherland is saying we'll have to send you a sample of our new blend at the distillery, 40% first fill sherry malt base. Oh wow! So Ryan Sutherland is now at 8 Doors Distillery in the very far north of Scotland. I hope I might be able to bump into you at Glasgow Festival, Ryan. I don't know if you're around. And Andrew's saying a low ABV whiskey that takes you by surprise is always an amazing experience. Any whiskey that takes you by surprise. Honestly. Lowlander is saying, I miss Bailey Nickel Jarvie. Please don't remind me that it doesn't exist anymore. I have a wee bit left of mine, Lowlander. Just a wee bit in a bottle down there. But what I'll say to you, and we know that nostalgia tends to make our memory of something even better, but as I've gone back to that Bailey Nickel Jarvie, and it's been open in a bottle a long time now, I opened that about 6 or 7 years ago, quite honestly. So it's going to have changed in the bottles. You know, there's a lot of evaporation there when we get this much whiskey and all that air. But I think it was good in comparison to what was available alongside it as peers at the time. I think we're now in a place where the whiskey landscape, even although we're maybe paying a wee bit more these days, is better. Is that controversial to say? It's different for blends because in the shelves, the same supermarket shelves I was talking to you about earlier, there were blends there for £12, £14, and you know those are there for drinks. those are a perfectly valid thing. It's a perfectly valid thing to sit on the shelf, and it's by far the most Scotch whisky that's made and sold is doing that very thing. But when you start to pay 25 and 30 pounds and more for whisky, and all the way up to the ridiculous prices that we're paying these days, what you're actually chasing is what whisky is wonderful at delivering, and that is flavour. The rest of it is kind of just being that drink, albeit it's a nice drink, and it has given somebody a flavour that they can come to enjoy, I suppose, and replace bottle after bottle. But what we're doing in here in this environment is whisky enthusiasts, whisky botherers, is to chase new experiences, new flavours. And when you can hold that up to somebody that's coming into whisky and demonstrate how compelling it is that we take grain, add water, and we get this myriad flavours, that's a compelling thing for people to start to understand whisky. And that's probably enough information for them for their first foray or two. What do you think? Let's have another wee go at this. I'm an hour and 30 in here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If my brother is still awake, I'm going to ask him if he's still available to come in, just to join us for the quiz at the end. I'll hang out with you. I'll talk to you guys for a moment and pick up some comments. But are you awake? Jimmy Leg has called you out, thinks that you might be a bit of a sissy. I don't know if he's still about. So there we have it. As we come into the whisky months and we're all enjoying a wee bit more whisky, put Ben's dram over there next to it, I think you're going to have the opportunity to talk to some folk, potentially bring them into understanding what flavour is, over drinking, and maybe make a whisky pal here or there, or certainly send somebody away who's going to be a lot more curious to do a wee bit more whisky exploration. And I know that the more people that we get into whisky, the harder it is for us to get our hands on it. But listen, there's millions of whisky out there, and there's millions more coming on stream all the time. And if it's not about sharing, if it's not about enjoyment, what is it all about? MJ Rodden is Insane Aquavita. I managed to get the last couple of bottles of B&J out of Dan Murphy's 2015, still sitting in my uncle's basement in Sydney, I hope, unless your uncle's gone in and helped himself. Rob Halford is saying, come on, he knows my brother. He knows that he's not a sissy, and he seems to know some of his catchphrases too. Jimmy Legg is saying, if I call you a sissy, it's bad. And Hellswood is saying, he is busy downstairs finishing your brora. You did have a wee shot of my brora. Tell him you want to head out on a scooter, says Jimmy Jazz. Jimmy, it's so good to have you in, buddy. And Domans 1 is saying, any recommendations for decently priced savoury whiskies in the early Macallan Mortlach style? Oh, you're asking for it there, but absolutely, I've got one for you. 15-year-old Speyburn 15. The weight of that whiskey is ridiculous. It's going to change depending on which batch you get. There's some lighter, some darker. If you're more kind of into, I know the style that you're after Mortlach, you're maybe going to be drawn to the more darker ones, but the lighter one is even my favourite. Speyburn 15, it's got the weight, it's got the density of flavour there. It's not a Mortlach, but it can sometimes play a little Mortlach-ish in style. I hope that helps you. Speyburn 15, 46% all natural. Everyone is saying, I almost feel guilty putting folks down the whisky path. Oh, he is awake. Quiz? My brother can't do a whisky quiz. He enjoys whisky. After a dram or two, he may be more willing. Well, that was exactly my plan. Ready. He's gonna head in. He's even gone and put on an Aquavita polo as well. I saw him in it earlier. Jimmy, like you saying, Edredar for the meat. And everything else. Edredar is a good call as well as Dormans, so that's a good one for Dormans. Another, if you can get your hands on Edredar, know that Edredar is often a cask story, but they've got a really kind of rude, heavy, oftentimes dirty base spirit there as well. And when that comes across, it can give you a really compelling, kind of really super dense flavour thing. Edredar can be very, very cask driven, but that's often right up some people's streets. I'm actually going to get him. Come on in. You're up for this. Right? You've got water. I don't worry, I've got millions of whiskey here. Have you been drinking? Have you been having a... Sorry, have you been tasting?
I've been drinking your tomato.
All right. Okay. Well, I know what you're into. Let me pull this in so that you're going to be able to see it. People see you. This is fantastic. This is a treat. I didn't think that this was going to happen.
Hello.
Welcome behind the bar.
Thank you. First time. Enjoying it.
And so this is my brother, everybody. He's a whiskey botherer too, but you're not a geek.
Not a geek.
Have you been watching tonight?
I have, yeah.
So you enjoy this as a drink, but you also enjoy it as a flavour.
Absolutely.
Aye. Would you say that the stuff I was saying tonight is the stuff that I've pestered you with over the years? Have I bullied you? Have I gone a bit too deep, or have I been kind of, if I was to put words in your mouth, you've always said to me, I love Whiskey Roy, but I enjoy it more when we're drinking it together.
Absolutely.
Aye.
Yeah, definitely. For me,
I'm going to pour you something. You didn't bring a whiskey in. Go ahead.
I was going to bring another tomato, but I thought about it.
So you were enjoying the sherry one then?
Well, you know me. I like this. I like the strong stuff.
Cask strength sherry.
Yeah,
as well,
definitely. Yeah, for me, it's very much. I can drink it at home, and I do enjoy it at home. But I always find when I'm in a crowd or yourself, I enjoy it a lot more, and I get a lot more from it. So yeah.
Yeah. So for you, let's be fair. You're not a whiskey geek. You're not kind of reading books. You're not. You'll text me and you'll ask my advice when you're in a position to buy whiskey.
Yeah.
You'll maybe gamble on your own, but you're kind of going to just take it on board and enjoy a drink at a time. You're likely to bottle and replace it than you are to build up a collection. Would that be true?
Yeah, I did try to do the collection thing. Thank you. Cheers. I did try to do collection, but I think for me, I kind of emptied it a little bit quicker than what most people would. But do you know what? It's such a wonderful thing to be involved with, and I remember back in the early days of Roy's journey and trying to go along with that journey myself and watching you.
500 miles separate us, 400 miles separate us, right? So that's
yeah.
I would go as far to say that you would have a lot more whiskey on your cabinet if I lived closer to you, I think.
Yeah,
I think that would
pretty much, yeah.
Right? You know,
pretty much, yeah.
If there's a lot of distance between you and your sheep, they go off and do their own thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Jerry Miller saying family get together, love it. Jimmy Legg is saying you are not twins. Jimmy's the guy that was calling you out.
Who called me the sissy?
That's Jimmy. That was Jimmy. Whiskey Novice is saying age difference, please. There are 5 years different between us.
We'll
Jimmy.
leave it at that.
Right, I'll leave it at that. 5 years between us. Lee J is saying a local to me on the YouTube. So Lee J's in
Chippenham. Yeah. You spoke about Lee J before.
Yeah, I have mentioned him. And,
good part of the country, my man.
And it looks like he's got a whiskey club on the go. So I don't know if you might be interested in getting your Geek on. Right, get cousin Kevin round as well. Maybe tomorrow night. We'll see Kevin tomorrow night. Frank Peter is saying, welcome Craig Duff. Good to see you in the vPub. Listen, I want to, now that you're on, Chris Horgan, is that your Chris?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Chris.
I'll show you a photo, and I've shown Craig this in the past, right?
It's amazing. That's unbelievable.
And I don't think that anybody's going to see this in our faces tonight, but I'm going to show you a picture of William Duff, who was the manager of Clynelish Distillery, I believe in the 30s. I've cropped the legend off this picture. But Jimmy Legg sent this to me, and he sent it to me because he saw a familiarity or something in my face. But I saw this, and I saw my entire family. This is William Duff is definitely a Duff, as I know the Duffs to be. And if you saw pictures of me or Craig,
if you saw Roy as a baby,
but interestingly, it's the features on the face that we
Yeah.
have as a baby. It's you too. You look a lot like that. But I think you probably to this day you've got that's more your. But it's not how much this man maybe looks like us. I think it's how much that man looks like a Duff.
Yeah, definitely.
What we recognise as Duff
Absolutely.
features. We don't possess many of them, but we possess enough for Jimmy Legg to have spotted that.
Absolutely, good shite.
Anyway, the reason I've invited you in is that I've been through the monologue, I've done everything like that. But at the start of this week, I sent out a thing right up to patrons, and I said that I've been an evangelist and I've evangelized all my friends into whiskey and all my family into whiskey as well, but I'm not good enough an evangelist to get you on the vPub because you said a flat no. And yet, the last minute tonight, I said, oh,
he's a bully.
What about it just if I get you in and we raise a glass and you say hello to everybody and participate in the quiz? Now, of course, you're not going to do well at the quiz because it's a geek quiz and I think it's a tricky quiz tonight too.
Okay.
I think it's a wee bit hard tonight, but let's gamify it. Whatever you get in the quiz, multiple choice. So even I always joke that even the chimpanzees get 33% right. Right? Okay, so
that's true.
We always say pass mark is 5 out of 10 in the quiz at the end. Whatever you score is the pass mark. So if you
guys, I do apologize.
No, you don't. If you do really well and score like a 7 or an 8 out of 10 or a really good score, they're going to hate you because that's the pass mark tonight. And they don't get a pass.
I'll intentionally fail then?
Or if you do miserably and you only get a 2 or a 3, then the pass mark drops tonight and much, much more people get a pass mark. So you could be a hero by lowballing it. So we'll play.
See what happens.
That way. Greg Stafford is in, buying me a wee dram from Canada, saying cheers to the Barflies. Happy to meet some new whiskey enthusiasts. Greg, it's wonderful to welcome you in here, my friend, and thank you very much for the dram. Certainly the Barflies are a very welcoming crowd as well. I'm noticing that we're very coordinated. Is that to hammer home the
I like how somebody said I look like a distiller.
Aye, a stillman or a warehouseman. Aye, something you fit that, definitely.
Whiskey guy.
Whiskey Novice is saying, get Lynn and the Waynes up. This feels historic. It's like a Who Do You Think You Are featuring whiskey. There's Jim Novice over in Northern Ireland. Greg's Whiskey Guide from Paris with that t-shirt and bald head. Like mine, no puns. Craig looks like a distiller manager. Aye, because that's the one you were picking up on.
I'd get the sack.
Doc. We know Doc. That's Doc.
Yeah, Doc.
McKellen Fine and Rare.
Hello, Doc.
I think Craig is on propofol tonight. Do you know what propofol is? I don't know what it is.
I don't know what that is.
Is that a German drug? Doc, tell us more.
It could be tomatin.
Sugar Kitty is talking about the ASAC. There's always ASAC questions. Do you stay? I know you catch the vPub occasionally.
Yeah, I do. I try.
You don't do the quiz, do you?
I don't know. It's too late for me.
Reb Mordecai is saying he got back 2 hours late. Reb, thank you very much. Reb left this behind for me to collect today, this bottle that's over my shoulder. You and I will open that tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Reb, you're a superstar. I know I got to welcome you here the last time you were in Scotland. Yet again, we missed each other today. Craig and I were out doing a wee tour, and we never managed to hook up, buddy. But
thank you, nice.
Ben.
Reb.
Oh, and thank you, Ben.
Oh, thank you, Ben, for
the tour today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much for the dram. You should have some of this too.
I will. Thank you, Ben.
I've given you a dram, haven't I?
Yeah.
It's good to see, Reb, that you're back home safe. Even if it is a wee bit late, traffic probably held you up. Everyone just saying, quick question, was Craig's childhood nickname for Roy? Or what was the first whiskey Craig and Roy snuck from? We didn't steal whiskey from our parents, did we?
No, I don't think we snuck.
I don't think either of us enjoyed whiskey.
No.
Until we were much older. No. What nickname for me? Do you have a nickname? You can't say any of those words. No,
no. Actually, it was. I don't think I did. In all fairness, I think he's.
With 5 years difference,
brother.
5 years difference. There was always. It wasn't until you were a teenager that we get close. I think.
Yeah.
I don't think we were ever.
If you
distant,
message me outside of it, we may have a different.
No. Falsgraph is saying, "Don't undersell yourself." Oh, I don't know what that's about. And Whiskey with Molly, that's Ben. He welcomed us today. He's already a hero. Has to put up with you. That's right. Only occasionally.
No, you don't know the other side.
I'm going to say that. I'm going to say it publicly. Danny Hebbington has bought me a dram to say, "Nice to meet better looking side of the family." There you go. Cheers to you, Danny. You're welcome. You can come back again.
Cheers.
Start with me. No, of course. But I have to say, and I'll say it publicly as well, that we don't get to see each other nearly as much as we used to in the past. We've got busy lives, everything that's going on, the distance between us always, but we always managed to meet up regularly. I used to work, my business took me down to Wiltshire, Swindon a lot. That doesn't happen anymore, but I've absolutely loved having you up.
Absolutely.
This week. It's been great.
Buddy. It's good to be here, and it's good to see you guys.
It's good to have you and yours up here. Okay, let's hit the quiz. Listen, Craig's here tonight, but it's no different from normal. It's not been an easy quiz, and I certainly didn't make this quiz with Craig in mind. It's going to be pretty tricky as usual. The first few will be quite easy. But to Craig, there's all going to be tricky questions. You'll be thrown a dart every time. So whatever he scores tonight, you can make, there's a wee pen and paper for you. Whatever Craig scores tonight becomes the pass mark, and we'll gamify it. Thanks to everybody who's hanging about at the end. Always love it. Still over 300 of you in at the last minute to participate in some quiz fun. Gluttons for punishment, but they're always designed to be fun or interesting, and even the asshat ones, hopefully, we learn something from them. Good luck, everybody. Like I say, it is multiple choice.
I can't see the questions either, or the answers. So
no, you can't. That's the size of a postage stamp.
Okay.
But even it doesn't show you. I'm scrolling through one at a time. You can't see anything. Which of these? Good luck, everyone. Question 1: which of these growing distilleries broke the 1 million bottle mark for sales in 2021? Now, that's a ridiculously hard question in the start, right? It's ridiculous, but they start off easy. Look at the answers. Which of these growing distilleries broke the 1 million bottle mark for sales in 2021? A. Linkwood, B. Loch Lomond, or C. Loch Lee? Jimmy Jazz is giving the tip.
I don't want to look.
The biggest tip: follow the crowd, Craig.
Okay.
So watch what happens to the chat now. Boom.
Okay.
So I feel like you had a good chance with this one.
Okay. Yeah, I would have said B.
So you've gone for it, right?
I've gone B.
He's committed to B as well. It looks like by far the easiest. We're starting off softball on these things. And I can tell you that Linkwood doesn't have an official bottling of its own. It's got flora and fauna. It's never going to sell. It's never going to make 1 million bottles. Loch Lee, it's just brand new distillery just out. Loch Lomond is clearly the answer. Up and coming distillery.
I've heard of that one.
Of course. Craig has already demolished a bottle of the Aquavitae. Did you enjoy it?
Loved it.
It was
absolutely terrific. Loved it.
Yeah, he's got good taste. There you go, B, Loch Lomond. So absolutely everybody kicking out of the park, and Sugar Kitty's saying Loch Lomond is huge. But it feels like an all of a sudden thing only in the last few years, and it's really reassuring as whiskey enthusiasts that when other things go out of reach and out of our hands, other things are ready to swing in there and pick up the slack. Interesting whiskey. Question 2: which of these typically natural producers also offer a lower ABV entry-level product? So as much as I've been banging on tonight about higher ABV, 46% and above, Jimmy Legg was talked about, oh no, it's fine for producers to have the entry-level things. There you are, Jimmy, a question just for you, but I'm asking you which of these producers cater for that. Is it A, Glencadam, B, Isle of Arran, or C, Tomatin?
Can I guess just without looking?
Just go right ahead and guess, aye. And I know you are totally guessing, but love it. Okay.
See what everybody else puts.
So, yeah.
Oh.
It's splitting the crowd, and I hope and I expect that that's the case.
I totally just guessed this. Well, I did. It was an educated guess on what I kind of know from those distillers.
I'm being a wee bit cheeky, because what I've been doing recently on the quiz to make sure that nobody should turn up at a vPub and go home with a donut 0 out of 10, right? As we never want that to happen. So just to point out that absolutely all of these Glencadam have a 40% entry level product. What do they call it? I'm not sure what they call it. Is the original? I think it's just the Glencadam original. I'm not sure. Isle of Arran has the Barrel Reserve now, a 43% product, and Tomatin has Legacy,
which
43%, which you enjoy.
Some of, yeah. I put C.
So everybody gets a freebie there. Doesn't matter what you answered. They absolutely all do. So nobody's getting a donut on. Because at the end, question 3, which of these Dewar's brands uses worm tub condensation? So talking about geek stuff here. We're maybe going a bit granular.
I'm still going to go for it.
Still going to go for it,
I'm going to go for a guess.
Yeah. So is it A, Speyburn, B, Craigellachie, or C, Aberfeldy? It's question 3. It's designed to be a wee bit easy, so even although on face value, read the question, it should be a bit easier. That's brands and worm tubs, Jimmy's saying.
Without looking.
So you're 2 for 2 so far, right?
Oh no, that was my Loch Lomond.
Oh, that's wrong.
That was my second.
That's right.
No, that was right.
Yeah.
That was right.
2 for 2.
This is my third.
Oh, you don't know how you're going to answer.
I don't know how I'm going to go.
Could be 3 for 3 or 2 for 3.
Looking like I'm not doing too well on this one, but
remember, it's dirty, folks, says Jim Whiskey Novice. I mentioned it tonight. I talked about worm tub condensation. Craig Ellichy is from Dewars. Speyburn uses worm tub condensation too, but they're not owned by Dewars. Speyburn is an Inverhouse brand, and Aberfeldy do not. So it's B. Your first banana skin there.
Yeah.
There was a banana skin there intended to trip people up for answering a bit too quickly.
Everybody know. There's some geeks in there.
Oh, aye, there's going to be 10 out of 10s tonight.
Yeah.
Question 4. What do Glengoyne, Speyburn and Auchentoshan have in common? 3 distilleries. Glengoyne in the Southern Highlands, Speyburn in Speyside, Auchentoshan also in the Southern Highlands too. But I'm asking what they have in common. Is it A, they've all released a legacy edition? B, all have 3 stills. 3 stills is an odd configuration. They'd usually be in pairs. C, they have all been managed by Dennis Malcolm. What's in common between Glengoyne, Speyburn and Auchentoshan? They all have legacy edition in their range. They have all got 3 stills, or they're all managed by Dennis Malcolm.
Hang on a minute, just change my answer.
This is easy, isn't it? Sitting back here and just...
For some of these guys, it's...
No, I mean, just what I do every Thursday night. It's great fun. I've got people to hang out with. And
more mates than me.
When you're not here. What have you gone for?
I'm going to C again.
You think that they've all been managed by Dennis Malcolm. Dennis Malcolm's managed a few places in his life, but he's currently associated with a long career at Glen Grant. Right. So that's not it. They don't all have legacy editions, although Glengoyne does have a legacy, but they do all have 3 stills. Auchentoshan is triple distilled, so they have a wash still, an intermediate still, and a spirit still. Speyburn has a big wash still, separate from 2 spirit stills, and Glengoyne have a similar configuration too. 2 spirit stills, 1 wash still. All have 3 stills.
I'm going to go with ask the audience on the next one, bud.
Ask the audience. Well, this is always going to be tricky because the halfway question is always an image.
Oh, I've been there.
You think so? I've not been there.
Okay, that gives me a clue.
Yeah. I think I've given everyone.
I know.
Okay, where are we looking at? It's the exact same 3 options as I gave you in the previous question. Are we looking at Glengoyne? Are we looking at Auchentoshan? Or are we looking at Speyburn?
I know you've been. I'm pretty sure.
It's pretty much a freebie for absolutely everyone.
I'm going to go. I'm trying to think of when I ring you and you talk about where you've been.
Well,
I know you've been to one of them.
Something a lot more recent is the fact that I've just talked about.
I'm going to go this.
In the previous slide, how the
I'm going to go with that
run.
Without looking at the screen, because
Precarious Dave is saying Roy must have been to A and B, Glengoyne, just north of Glasgow, Auchentoshan off to the west of Glasgow. Greg's Whiskey Guide is C, going with the crowd. And Jimmy Legacy, now that is a descending line arm. Absolutely see that going rocketing right down there. So a very quick descending line arm like that would have minimal copper contact. It's going to bring a lot of body and weight. Couple that to your worm tub condenser, that's a shell and tube, and couple that to a worm tub condenser on the spirit still, you're going to get that heavy spirit that I was recommending earlier as potential replacement to Mortlach. In my mind, we're talking about Speyburn. Thanks to Graham Fraser for the fantastic picture as well.
I got it.
Nice work. So what's that? That's you. 1, 2, 3. Oh,
10 light.
So the pass mark is at least going to be 3 tonight. It's easy, isn't it?
It's easy.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy, especially
you've got that.
You're not using that, though, are you?
No, I did. Not on this one. I didn't look at it.
Right.
I wanted to have my.
Question 6 starts to get trickier now. Always starts to get trickier. Duffton's Ghost Distillery of Convalmore is what today? What is Convalmore today? Is it A, warehousing for Glenfiddich? B, a car park and a housing development, or C, a dark grains plant? A dark grains plant is where they take byproducts of distilling, etc.
I've not looked, so I'm going to go with that.
Okay. Fernando is saying, I think it's the first time that I've made a 5 out of 5, and he's celebrating already. Fantastic. Whiskey and Wine Trails, fantastic. Tom, he's halfway to 10. Jimmy Legg is also in 5 out of 5, along with Orange Wool. Precarious Dave, Graham Cartwright, like they're all knocking out the park.
Can I change my answer?
You kind of want to change it now, don't you? Convalmore is absolutely, these days, it's now owned by William Grant's. And William Grant's, the buildings are still standing, but there's shells, there's no equipment inside. But they house spirit produced at Glenfarclas and Balvenie. I read it in the Malt Whiskey Yearbook. I believe both. So
sorry, guys.
No, you're doing all right. They're happy. The worse you do, the happier.
Okay, all right. Yes. Yeah.
Question 7. The wee banana skin emoji here. I think we might be able to just sneak this. No, maybe not. Maybe just over 2 hours. Which of these regions received the most nominations in the 2022 Oswis? So the 5 regions in Scotch, Lowlands, Islay, Highlands, Speyside and Campbelltown. I'm asking which one of these was the more successful in nominations. I've managed to get a whole stream done tonight without giving any of the Oswis away. I've done okay, I think. Was it Highlands and Islands get the most nominations? Was it Campbelltown get the most nominations? Or Islay get the most nominations? A, Highlands and Islands. B, Campbelltown. C, Islay. Martin Jones is enjoying it tonight. A 6 out of 6. Falsgraf on a 6 out of 6 as well. Fantastic. Just read that in the new Malt Whiskey Yearbook, says Mike Molasses. He's reading up. He knows where I get the majority of the quizzes for the vPub. Absolutely. All the gold is in this annual wee gem of a companion. B for banana skin, says Andrew Pierce. He's going against the crowd there. Most of the crowd are going for A.
That's the wife.
Nana Green Cleaning Limited. That's
Kel's up there.
That's Craig's company. His wife's in there. What is she saying? See, she's playing along. she's guessing Islay. I can tell everyone that, and I've actually written it down because it's quite incredible. I gave it away earlier, Kel. You probably weren't watching, but I talked about how Islay only had a single bottle. It had 3 nominations because the same bottle got nominated twice, and Bunnahabhain 12, and Brook Laddie got a nominations 3. Campbelltown got 6 nominations across Kilkerran, Springbank, and Glen Scotia. But the Highlands and Islands blew it out the park. Depending on how you want to, I mean, there's things in there like Annock. Some people will decide that's a Highland. Some people will say it's a Speyside. Timorous Beastie, for example, is a blended malt that you might not consider that a Highland, but it's their Highland take on the blended malt category. But it's between 13 and 15, depending on how you phrase it. The rest of them, if you go through them, Arran 10, Glencairn 10, Leitchik 10, Loch Lomond 12, Loch Lomond single grain, Ardnamurchan, Arran, Loch Lomond, Ardnamurchan is a new distillery, Rassie, Torravik, Ardnamurchan cask strength in the final category, along with Leitchik 18, and potentially that Timorous Beastie and Knockdhu, as I say. So quite huge success from the Highland region in the Oswin nominations.
I kind of knew the answer to that, but I had to go B, just from the experience that I had there. So for me, even if it wasn't the right answer, it's the right answer.
So still on 3, yeah?
Still on 3.
3 for 7. You need 2 more to get the normal pass mark. But here, no pressure.
Don't worry.
No pressure.
Let's go.
Question 8. In the context of whiskey production, what is pot ale? Production question. Where is pot ale derived from? Is it A, the spirit still residue or leftovers? B, from the wash still residue? Residue doesn't seem like the right word suddenly. Or C, fermentation residue. Where is pot ale from? Spirit still, wash still, or fermentation? I like to throw in production questions from time to time. And bear in mind, when I put this together, you had told me there's no way I'm going to be in the vPub. I'll watch a bit and go to bed early, you said.
Do you know, right, just because of my Islay experience, and that's kind of a
splitting the crowd, so it'd be tough for you to follow that crowd.
I'm going to stick to that.
I can tell you that spirit still residue, or the leftovers from the spirit still, is spent lees, and it's from the wash still. Well done.
Come on, that was just purely for being an Islay.
Yep. So once they've boiled off and take as much alcohol as they can, whatever liquid is left is known as pot ale. Jimmy Legg's bought us a dram, a very generous dram as well. Jimmy Legg, a pleasure to meet one of the Duff family. Cheers, Craig. No, sissy, you. If only I think you and Jimmy Legg would go on brilliantly together. Jimmy, thanks for the very generous drama, friend.
Thank you.
Cheers. He is a bit of a sissy sometimes.
Most of the time.
Question 9, second from last. The current Glenlivet distillery was once named Minmore and was built in which year? Well, this is going to be really tricky. But all of them have been tricky for you, let's be fair.
Yeah,
it's not tricky from any
apart
others.
from the first one.
Confident about Loch Lomond. Minmore was built in which year? A, 1817, B, 1823, or C, 1859? Now, this wee icon here might mean that you're not safe following the crowd. So I would just
go with that.
Go
I'm
with
not
your
looking
gut.
with the crowd. I've not looked at the crowd. I'm going to go with that.
Right.
Final answer.
Falsgraf is admitting, no idea, I'm going to guess. Greg's Whiskey Rise is admitting he doesn't remember. It's like most of us, Greg. Looks like a Christmas quiz so far, says Greg. Or maybe I'm being generous with everyone. Just spoke a wee bit too soon there. And Ren is in. Ren, I hope I've welcomed you before, but it's nice to have you here tonight, saying that's good enough for a pass for me. Watchman is saying B. I said 1823 out loud before I saw the year, so I better go with it. Oh. Greg, B, you said. You would be spot on if you were considering the whole George Grant story, the Glenlivet story. First person to take out a legal distilling license under the new Excise Act of 1823. But that was the old distillery. They moved along to the Minmore distillery in 1859. Greg, I apologise, my friend, hence the banana skin that's in there. People know that Glenlivet tend to put 1824, I think, on the bottles for that very reason. But no, there's a wee banana skin in there, and apologies, you're going to be throwing things at the screen at me now. Whiskey Franco has bought me a dram saying, ducking out a few minutes early, fantastic vPub, and cheers to family. I'll raise a glass to that, my friend. Yep. Cheers to you, Whiskey Franco, and thanks very much for your generous dram. Got me drinking at the end. This is the Thompson Brothers blend that I opened. It's pretty good. Pretty straightforward, but good. Jim Whiskey Novice saying, oh, balls was in for an 8 for 8. Yeah, buggers. He's not happy. He's not happy. Okay, it's always an ass hat at the end, but
I got it wrong.
I have to say, as far as ass hats go, this is probably the mildest ass hat question. We always finish on a really obnoxious question. But tonight is mild. I feel like it's kind of mild. We'll wait and see. It's still got a whiff of the ass hat about it. So good luck, everybody. Who's sitting on a 9 out of 9 right now? Molasses on an 8. MG Rodden on 8. Fraser Thistle on 8. Falsgraf, yes. Instinct Rules, 9 out of 9. Superb, Falsgraf. You're almost in there, buddy. Got to hang out with Falsgraf earlier this year. He's got a cool hat in Germany. 9 out of 9 for Jerry Miller. Wow. Fantastic, Jerry. Phil Jones on 9 out of 9. Terrific stuff, Phil. Superb performance. Tom Elmer is talking about 100 years older than me. Your wife is going to be better than you, Craig, says Jimmy Jazz. You know Jimmy Jazz.
I do know Jimmy Jazz.
We're in Bristol together,
yeah.
Right?
Hello, Jimmy.
And Lassie Hotsman, fantastic. Lassie, good to have you in. He's on 9 out of 9 too. So there's going to be 10 out of 10. Peter Lee, 9 out of 9. Peter Lee over in Paisley. Right, here we go. Ass hat at the end. Mild ass hat tonight, as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure. Glen, meaning valley, is the most common distillery prefix. But which of these is the most common in operating, which of these is the most common in operating Scotch malt distilleries? So not the most common, Glen is the most common, but the most common out of this selection. So which comes second is basically what I'm saying. Is it A, Ben, meaning high hill? Oh no!
Did you give the answer?
I've given the answers away on the slide.
I missed that.
Have I got another one? No, maybe some people didn't see that.
I didn't see it.
You get a freebie. If I've messed it up, you get a freebie.
I didn't see it.
I added it on at the end. I'm going to give this out for the people that might not have seen it. So I'm going to have to read it.
So read it out.
It's too tiny to read. I've got it here up here. Don't look. I'll pull it up here on a big screen. Question 10. I've left the answers in. What a clown. Everybody's seen it. They're taking it.
I've not seen it. So
after Glen, which is in the high 20s into the 30s, if you include the closed distilleries, what is second? Is it Ben, meaning high hill? Is it Loch, meaning lake? Or is it Ard, meaning high? So what comes second from Ben? Loch, and Ard. I checked this tonight. I should have had you in proofreading, but then you wouldn't have been able to participate. Nightmare.
Okay, I'm just going to totally throw this out, and I'm going to go with that. And I'm going
What's next? Ben, all the Ben distilleries, such as Ben Rinnes.
Yeah.
All the Loch distilleries, such as Loch
Lomond.
Yep. Or Ard, such as Ardbeg.
I'm going to go with that which I initially thought, and I'm going to look up now. Oh.
The ultimate asshats is the last drop. Cheers, Chris. Yes, Yash Desai saying thanks, Roy. Ka-ching. They're all bagging it. Did I miss that dram from Greg? I feel like I did. I missed a wee Greg dram. Look, exceptional vPub Roy. Cheers to you and your family. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Watchman 999. Cheers to you. Let's pull this back up again where I completely showed everybody what that actually is. Ben, so Ben Rinnes, Ben Nevis, Ben Romac, Ben Riac. There are 4 of them. Loch. There are more lochs. There are lochs other places in the world, but obviously in the context of Gaelic, meaning lake, I was thinking, Loch Lomond, Loch Lee, and Loch Ranza. Arran is Loch Ranza now. But Ard, there are 5, meaning, You've got Ardbeg, Ardmore, Ardnamurchan, Ardnahoe on Isla. What's the 5th one? Ardross in the Northern Highlands, and soon we'll have a 6th one with Ardgowan appearing.
I got that one right.
You went for C.
I totally went. I went for C.
So what's your final score?
4.
No, the one. I think you got another one before this.
I think it was 4. Oh no, 5. 5 because I got the B. 5.
Pass mark.
Is that pass mark?
Pass mark. So there you go. Multiple choice. Everybody's in with a chance for pass mark. And there you go. Ard is the one I was looking for. So let's see how many folk got a 10 out of 10 tonight. Apologies for... Well, it's a freebie. I don't need to apologise for you guys. You're super happy that you got a wee bonus. Reckon it might be Ard, says Precarious Dave. Aye. Oh no, Whiskey Novice is saying C. No Rolex is laughing at me. No Rolex is extra laughing at me. Damn it, that was an easy 10. Always saying 10/9. Oh, so Jimmy Legs finished on a 9 out of 10. Fantastic, Jimmy, superb. Who managed it? A Falscraft is saying I did not, but guessing it might be C, says Blackfen. Sorry. Jimmy Legs is saying everyone saw it.
Except me.
Martin Jones is saying I'd have gone with the right one anyway. Good for you, Martin. And good. I'm sure you're being absolutely honest. And Sugar Kitty is on 9 out of 10 as well. Where's all the 10s? Come on, who's celebrating the 10s tonight? Steve Atkins is on 9. Terrific. I think I missed a wee dram.
There was a 10 at the bottom. What was the dram there?
And a wee 9 out of 10 for Steve Atkins saying cheers as well. Thanks for the dram, Steve. Cheers to you, my friend. Congratulations on a brilliant score. What about Royal Loch Nagar? Oh, because that's valid. Good call, Mark. Superb. So does that change the outcome?
Yeah.
No, there's still only 3 lochs, right? I think. Let's bring it in. So 3 doesn't change the outcome, but Royal Loch Nagar is a good shout. Still valid. It's not Royal's the prefix though, right? But it only became Royal because of a royal warrant. So it would have been just Loch Nagar potentially originally. Mark, I'll give you that. It doesn't change the answer, but good call, buddy. They know more than me. That's the problem. It's the problem with this drill. It really is.
That's good though.
Not everyone. I didn't. Duff, says Stephen Toth. Pedro Menezes is on 8. I got to meet Pedro as well. Fantastic. This quiz is Ard, says Andrew Piers. Not too bad though, Andrew, but a good wee pun. Ard Greg. Says Watchman. Of course. He's Greg. Ard Greg. But great score tonight as well, Greg. I'm not seeing. Well done, the 10s.
There was a 10 somewhere.
I'm not seeing the 10s.
There was a 10 here.
Lassie, fantastic. My first 10 out of 10. Some luck and priceless help from the crowd. And nice with the ass hat. Terrific. So when I talked about it being a mild ass hat, I bet you didn't expect it to be that mild, as in just give it away to you. But it's just the way we roll sometimes. 10 out of 10 for Black Fen, but would have guessed A for Q10 if you hadn't given it away. Ooh, fair enough though, but it's a 10 out of 10. You just take it, you just roll and go with it. Fraser Thistle on a 9. Orange Wheel Rule did get a 10 out of 10. Falscraft, so only one 10 out of 10 still. Oh, he slipped up at the very end. I think he got a 9. Just want to make sure. I'm probably forgetting. Listen, congratulations to anybody else. Graham Young celebrating a 10 out of 10 as well with the emoji there. The emojis are easy to see.
Can I just say I beat Chris? That's all that counts.
So Chris is Craig's work colleague, of course. You can't call him a colleague, can you? Partner?
Partner.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And he was playing along. But good for you, Chris.
Yeah, well done,
Well
Chris.
done on the
Still
honesty as
beat you.
well. Aye. Craig looks saintly with your logo plaque behind him. It suits him. He does. Look at that. It's like a halo.
Oh yeah, it's like a halo.
Daniel Caballera is saying, great vPub tonight. Thank you. Have a good night. Thanks very much, Daniel. Jimmy Legg is saying, what's the worst thing that Craig did to you when you were kids?
Can we reverse that question?
You know, I don't think you've ever done anything bad.
And neither did you. Neither did you.
Oh, we'll not talk about the scarab. Hillswood is saying, fun vPub this evening. Great to have you back behind the bar at the vPub. Great to see Craig too. And see you next week. Helen, it's always brilliant to have you in. Smashing to see you. I wasn't monitoring your score. How did you get on tonight? You always do terrifically well in the quiz. And Tom was saying, hey Roy, why don't you explain to everyone how to atomize P? You've not listened to the Dramface podcast yet, have you?
Not yet, no.
Yeah, it's a Gregor anecdote from his trip. Gregor
Okay.
McQuee. You need to listen to it. You're mentioned, by the way. Tom Elmer is saying, would the scores be higher if you shut off the chat for the quiz, I wonder? Good night. Absolutely. I think that the chat is very much part of the dynamic, Tom, and I think it's all the more fun for it. It doesn't matter. You're only playing against yourself in the quiz.
Yeah.
If you use it or if you choose to ignore it, if you follow the chat, you roll with it. So if they get it wrong, everybody gets it wrong. Nano Green, come on, your duffs is from Chris. Fantastic. 9 out of 10 for Helen tonight. Well done, Helen. Terrific stuff. Phil Jones, I hope I shouted out.
Wow.
It's 10 out of 10. And Lee J is saying, great one tonight, Roy. Cheers. And Craig, take care. Thanks, everybody. This is always just amazing to me that all you guys hang out. Still well over 230 of you in at the last breath as we raise a wee glass. Just to say, I've only got one more vPub. I've only got one more to do. That's right, next week before the Oswas on the 5th of November. Please remember that. Stick it in your diary. Remember the Oswas ceremony. It's already on the channel, so you can go in and set a wee reminder on the channel. 6 o'clock on Saturday, 5th of November, Guy Fawkes night. Can you imagine the noise that's going to be outside the windows?
Yeah.
We're just going to need to go with it. And after that, I can talk about everything again, and I won't be worried about poker faces and keeping a straight face and not having any slip-ups of giving away any results or whatever. But there's going to be some interesting things to talk about, some predictable things to talk about, and lots of fun in between. Ralph is going to be here sitting beside me for that ceremony on the 5th. But in between then and now, next week, a week from tonight, I'll be back with you talking about another, hopefully, interesting topic. In the meantime, I'm going to raise this glass to you all and say thanks for joining me for another wee vPub here tonight. You're all very dearly loved, and it's always a pleasure to hang out with you. And it's a pleasure when I've got somebody.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Sitting alongside
and maybe
you.
we could come again and talk about some of the stories that people want to hear. Cheers. Thank you.
Now. Until
Appreciate
next time.
it.
Slanjiva.
Slanjiva.